Four, three, two. We are going live. And we are live. G'day, everybody. How you going today? It is so good to see you. And I would love to say hi to everybody out there and for everybody to say hi to Bobby Tonelli, who
Hey guys.
you might have seen my episode where I actually went to Singapore and met with Bobby, and it was an amazing time that we had walking the streets. And Bobby showed me the Singapore ropes, which is amazing. Now, for those of you that don't
Mhm.
know Bobby, he's an actor, he's a presenter, he's a model, and he also does lots of kind of live presentations. Like, let's say a new Marvel movie comes to Singapore. He's
Mhm.
the guy that rolls out the red carpet for the big stars to come in. Bobby, can you tell us a little bit about that side of your life? Because when I look on Instagram, that looks absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it's quite fun. Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me on board. Hello, everyone. Yeah, so what I do outside of YouTube, obviously, this is more of a hobby, kind of a hobby, kind of a passion project, if you will. But my day job is actually emceeing events and hosting events and also acting on television and film and stuff like that. So, yeah, what I do for my daily work is host live events, like you mentioned, like things for Disney, Marvel. I've done, various different corporate events, different product launches, tech products, fashion products. I do a lot of those things. So that's sort of my daily life, or not every day, but I would say a number of times a month. And then outside of that, I kind of like to dive into the camera side of things because as an actor, I was always in front of the camera, but I was always interested in learning what the cameramen were seeing. And also as a model back in the day, I'm a little too old for that now, but yeah, so I got fascinated with that side of it. And then from there, just sort of dived into the back end and into the gear, to the lovely gear, and just got full of the all that gas, as we call it, gear acquisition syndrome. And here we are today.
And Bobby, you've also spent some time in your TV presenting roles, not only
Mm,
TV actor, but TV presenting. But you were part of a tech channel,
mm.
which was that is that kind of how you got into the huge, like, was it 5 years or something with the tech channel before you've now started your own channel? And of course, everybody, please go and subscribe. The link is in the notes below. Subscribe to Bobby. We've got to get him to 50K. Come on,
Thank,
Bobby.
thank you,
100K.
thank you, Matt. That's one of my goals this year. But yeah, so I previously worked in tech years ago. When I was in America, I'm based in Singapore. I used to work for a telecommunications company. Then I was selling Google ads, and then for a while, and then I got into working with Apple. But when I came to Singapore, yeah, I was doing the acting and the hosting for a while. And then a tech company called by the name of Tech 360 that's based out of Singapore asked me if I would be keen to, host some videos. And I said, sure, let's give it a shot. And we actually had a lot of fun. And I was with them for about 5 years. And then another company here called Geek Culture, which does a little bit more than just tech, but entertainment and collectibles and all those kind of things. They said, "Hey, would you be keen?" And I thought, you know what? Let me try it out because I was interested in kind of just not just doing tech, but other things as well, just to kind of keep the stimulation going. The passion and the flow of it all. And then recently, as of October of last year, we decided to part ways, and now I am solo on my own for the very first time. So that's
And I
kind of
tell you,
interesting
Mr.
as well.
Hand flying solo, your channel is growing really quick. Now, there's something that's
Yeah.
interesting about Bobby's situation is he's in Singapore, which is kind of a little bit of a hub of the world,
Mm.
and pretty much every product goes across his desk, and that's so awesome. Which is what we're here to talk about today, Bobby, isn't it? Some
It
some
is. It is.
uh some.
Yeah.
I really have a strong feeling that 2024 is going to be massive for everybody. Like,
Mhm.
this is not Nikon centric. This is just everybody.
Yeah.
And so Bobby and I just wanted to sort of shoot the breeze, chew the fat, but we'd also love everybody in the comments. You can let's speculate hard. Let's speculate as hard as we can, and rock some of these things out. Now, one of the first questions I've seen here is from Ray, and Ray,
Mm.
of course, is going. This is my dear friend Raymond Parker. He's going, "Where's the 35 1.2? Bobby, what's going on, man? Where's the 1.2?"
I think everybody's waiting for that lens, and I don't know what's going on. I'm thinking probably it'll come out right after the holiday season. We probably maybe you'll see it in January or February because this lens has been one of the most requested lenses from Nikon's lineup because they don't have a really, the 35 1.8, whatever, is a good lens, but you don't have that 35 1.2 or that 1.4. And I'm with you. I think it's going to come soon. It has to come soon. I mean, people have been waiting for this lens. They need this lens.
Absolutely. And I mean, I often think about what is, because to me, there's kind of three layers to this. There's what I want personally.
Mm-hmm.
There's kind of what everybody else wants, as in we're all individuals. So that's another whole category of like another, how many photographers are there? Another 10 million. And
Mm-hmm.
then there's what are the companies up to? And whenever I think about making a review or speculating on the future, you try and keep all three of those interests,
Mm-hmm.
stakeholders, which is myself, everybody else, and the company into my thinking. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, well, I feel like Nikon's had such a massive 2023. You know, they've just had hit after hit. When it's the Z8, it's the ZF, it's the 600, it's the 85, although the 85 probably came out in the previous financial year, the 135, and lots of other stuff, right? I think it's all been very successful. Oh, the 180 to 600, all been very successful.
Yeah.
So do you sometimes maybe even push a product to the next financial year so you can just make the next financial year look good? And I think we have to think a little bit about those sorts of things,
Mm-hmm.
because companies they also have to they have to worry about those, like they've got to worry about everybody, and they've got to worry about that as well. So
Yeah.
anyway,
I
we've already started the speculating. Anybody, if you've got any questions, don't forget to put a QQQ in front of it. The comments are running hard, so it's hard to keep up, but it's great to see everybody there. And I just want to do a big shout out to Chuck. Chuck, I watched you on the live stream last week. It was magnificent to see you on that stream.
Oh, that's great to hear. Chuck's back.
Yes, Chuck's back, and Chuck's here
Fantastic.
today with us in the comments. So Chuck, amazing.
Oh,
It
that's
was it
great.
was a big thing for the community when you had to step away for a little while, and it's amazing for the community that you're stepping back. And we are all watching your journey with excitement and joy that you're
Oh,
here, and you're here today. Oh my God, so good.
awesome. Absolutely awesome. Hey, Chuck, how are you? I miss chatting with you. So hopefully we can do that again very, very soon.
Now, so we wanted to talk about the future and speculate on the
Mhm.
future and so on. Also, another thing, what we might do is we'll start the speculation because we already have, and but later on, I want to talk about a little bit of your and my goals for 2024. But we'll get into that a little bit later. So
Okay.
what we're going to do is we're going to go alphabetically through the camera companies. We're probably not going to hit every camera company because there's some of them that I don't really know very much about. For
Mhm.
example, I don't know much about Leica and what they might be up to. You might know more about that because you are a Leica man, everybody. You need to know that Bobby's got
Yeah.
a couple of Leicas. Is there even one on the shelf behind you there? You got a
There's a
lot of
few
gear.
behind me on the shelf right now. Yeah, there's the SL2S and the M7, but yeah, we could talk a little bit about it. I think there are some exciting things coming, but I mean, just briefly on that, if you
Yep.
want, we can
Yep.
chat about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be in order, this thing.
Yeah.
We do what we do.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So talk about
So,
Leica. What have you got up for me on Leica?
okay, so obviously it's Leica has a lifespan of usually about 3 to 4 years on each of their cameras. They're a little bit longer than other brands out there. I mean, a little more traditional in that sense. And obviously the SL2 was released at the end of 2019. So everybody's speculating, of course, the SL3, and there's rumors already on Leica rumors talking about that now. So my guess is that what we're going to see is an SL3. And if you look at anything like the Q3, which has been a huge, massive hit for Leica in 2019, I'm sorry, 2023, I should say, that we're going to see a lot of those, probably the same specs carry over to the SL3. That's my guess. 60 megapixel full frame sensor. And what Leica does very interesting with their sensors, especially in their higher megapixels, is they give you the option to change the resolution to, various different megapixels. So if you're using a vintage lens and you can't resolve up to 60, you can bring it down to 24 or 18 respectively. So I'm expecting to see that technology. Big push for video for Leica, because obviously with the partnership with Panasonic and the whole L-mount alliance, I'm expecting to see more video functionality into the SL3 if that comes about. What else? I mean, phase detect autofocus is something everybody's been asking from them for a very, very long time, especially Panasonic, which I think we'll talk about later on as well. And because those companies are kind of like hand in hand on a lot of the technology. So I'm expecting phase detect autofocusing, probably not going to be at the same level of Sony or Nikon or Canon, but I would think it's going to be very comparable to what we're seeing from Fujifilm and other brands out there. It'll definitely get people in the gate to look at Leica a little bit more. What else? Body design may be very similar. Leica doesn't like to change too many things.
Well,
They're very
the
quite
M's won't
traditional.
change. That's for sure.
Yeah. I'd probably see some probably more smaller, more compact lenses coming out that are going to be more affordable. I think they're kind of diving into that realm to sort of bring people into the L-mount alliance a bit. So that's exciting. Outside of that, I guess we're going to see a monochrome Q3. You know, they did the Q3 already, but they always do a monochrome version of black and white, which is absolutely fantastic. If you love black and white photography, these are some of the best cameras to use for that. And gosh, I don't know what else. Maybe another M11 variant, but I don't know. I think it's going to be more lenses, big push on the SL system, and maybe a little bit on the Q.
Yeah, great stuff. It's interesting. I saw the Art of Photography talking about a company called, and you might know them because they're in your region. They're called Light something, and they make
Light Lens
lenses.
Lab.
Yes,
Yep.
and they make lenses actually like Leica used to make lenses, and they've just released the original version or a replica of the 50mm 1.2 Noct.
Yeah.
That looks gorgeous. It looks so gorgeous. I'm actually thinking of getting one and adapting it for, say, my ZF, which is what we're shooting on right now.
I'll tell you what, as a matter of fact, I just released a video on Light Lens Lab actually last night. They're 50 millimeter f2 Pancro 2, which is sort of a homage lens to the Cooke Speed Pancro 2 of the 1940s. And I'm very familiar with this brand. They're out of China. And I will tell you, Matt, they make, out of all the third-party manufacturers out there, and there's some that are really, really good, right? When it comes to the build quality and to the attention to detail, they rival Leica in terms of their build quality. It is phenomenal. I mean, they created the 35 f2 8-element lens. That was their first lens they came out in the gate with. And I have a friend of mine who has that lens, and that lens is around $70,000. You know, if you get a mint condition copy of it, right? And you put it next to it, and you would be blown away by how on point it is. It is phenomenal. So when they say they're doing hand grounded spherical elements in a 51.2, because the guy who owns it is a collector of Leica lenses and also other photography lenses, he's a big collector. This is going to be massive. This is going to be big.
I mean, it looks like good stuff, and it looks like it's a really quite viable and realistic alternative to buying Leica first-party lenses. And these guys are going out of their way to go back and use 1960s techniques to make these lenses. So I think that's really exciting. We've got a couple of QQs lining up here. Donald Hawk, g'day Donald, great to see you in the chat. Donald Hawk is asking, who else will come out with a global shutter? Well, we will get to Sony a little bit later on, but I mean, personally, I think everybody will come out with a global shutter at some point. I am not interested in throwing shade at all today, but I suspect a lot of people have seen what DP Review put out in the last day or two. They've actually reviewed the global shutter, the A9 III, and it's as we kind of all thought. There is, and the actual headline, I'd like to find that headline because this is their quote, not mine. Just give me a second. If you can feel Bobby, just for a second.
Yeah, sure, go for it.
Can you do some Harry Connick Jr. for us? You've got the hair for it. Or something. You know.
Nobody wants to hear me sing. You want to keep people on this live stream. This is the one thing.
Fly me to the moon. I wanna swing amongst the stars.
You're much better than me. You're much better than me.
All right, well, so you got to match your hair with my voice. There we go. Living the dream. And that was a great feel. Now I just want to find this headline. So the headline from DP Review is global shutter comes with an image quality cost, right? That's it. That's the headline. So look, what it says to me and what we speculated, what a number of us have many people have speculated, a lot of people have had this conversation, is that global technology, it does have a dynamic range hit and an ISO hit. We all know that, and it's just a matter of when each company decides it's mature enough for them to bring it to market. So I don't know. I've speculated 2 to 5 years. Sorry, this is because I was painting my fence yesterday, everybody. So I got paint on my arms. It's not because of whips and things. But anyway, I've speculated 2 to 5 years, maybe before someone like Nikon might do it. Canon obviously already have cine cameras. They're not full frame, but obviously full frame versus APS-C is just, it's just bigger. So I don't think it's a problem. So any thoughts on global there, Bobby? I'll let you have a go now.
Yeah, I think, obviously, like you said, there's going to be hit on dynamic range and obviously ISO performance. The base ISO, I think, is around 250. And I think that obviously when camera companies are putting out this technology has already they've been testing it for a couple of years already. So I don't think that that's much of a surprise. I mean, Red uses the global shutter with the Komodo and the Komodo X respectively. And I would say that Nikon with the Z9 and the Z8 are the closest to a global shutter for, you know what I mean, for a full frame system
They
outside of
are.
now what we have with the A9 III. But um, I don't know. You know, I think this camera is designed for one thing and one thing only, and it's speed. And it's to capture the moment in action in sports, especially for the Olympics coming up or whatever it may be. And everything else, software, AI can clear. I mean, you're worried about ISO performance, opacity, noise, it's gone. Or even in Lightroom, just throw it in there, it's gone. You know, dynamic range. Look, are people really looking about dynamic range when they're capturing sports? No, they're looking for that moment, that exhilaration, that moment of glory or that moment of defeat. They're not looking at, well, am I getting 14 stops here? Am I getting 12 stops? They don't give a shit. You know what I mean? So I think that when we look at that from that perspective, it's not a big deal. But this kind of brings us maybe into talking about Sony a little bit here.
Let's do
Everybody's
it.
talking about the A9
Let,
III.
let's do it. Yeah.
What about the Alpha 1 2?
Well, that's on my list. I mean, from my perspective, the time is about right. It's three. It would be 3.5 years since
Mm,
the A1 to hit the Olympics, which is
mm,
fine.
mm-hmm.
I'm okay with a 3.5 year to 4 year cycle. So
Yep.
yeah, what's it going to be? What's it? I like. I'm always going to sit there and say we don't need more than 47, 50 megapixels for your
Mm,
high speed
mm,
epic all rounders. It's the right size for 8K. You know, it's the right size to minimize diffraction and
mm-hmm.
so on and so on. Like it's just a sweet spot. And
Yeah.
honestly, what percentage of us need more? And I
Mm.
think the answer is it's a small percentage of us need more than. So, what do you think about the Sony A1 2?
I think this is where we are going to see a high megapixel global shutter. And I think Sony's had it. I think they developed their sensors. I think that this is when the Alpha One first came out, when the A1 first came out, it just blew everybody away. What are you talking about? 50 megapixels, 30 frames per second raw? What? I mean, there were YouTubers out there like this cannot be happening. I mean, I remember watching Jared Polin. He was like, no, 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 this cannot be happening. This cannot be happening. There's got to be something holding it back, right? He was very, holding. He was like a little bit, I would say, wary of the technology. Then when everybody got in their hands, they're like, whoa, where did this come from? Because there were no leaks, there were no rumors. It just came out of nowhere. Sony, I don't think is going to raise the megapixels, but they are going to probably make it a global shutter because it only makes sense. You got the A9 III, now global shutter, 24 megapixels, but now you bring a 50 megapixel or 45 megapixel in global shutter with speeds like the A9 III, but now you can do even 8K. I don't know. That
I,
sounds
I
like a good Alpha 1 2 to me.
I feel like the dynamic range and ISO trade-offs versus the fact that you're punching through twice the data of the A9 III,
Hmm.
it's a big step. It's a big step to get an A1. But anyway,
That,
that's the excitement, isn't it? I think we both think it's highly likely that an A12 will come this year.
hmm,
Will it be, because the other thing we can keep talking about is stacked can obviously get faster
yep.
and it can get closer to global, but it's still not global.
Hmm.
And there's clearly a balancing point between the speed and, to the best of my understanding, and please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, as you get faster, you get more noise because the electricity is flowing so quickly on the sensor. So that's part of the trade-off. The faster you go, there's more noise, and that's where noise comes from.
Yeah.
And so they're always going to be working to go faster, 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 but we've got to keep reducing the noise, or doing it with processing, which of course the
Right.
faster the processors get. So I could see an in-between spot where,
Hmm.
man, and I can't remember, someone did some testing, but the Z8 and Z9 are like 6 milliseconds or something,
Yeah.
and the A1 is 7 milliseconds, and the R3 is 8 milli, like super fast. So what if we could get that down to 3 milliseconds and 2 milliseconds, but we're still not global?
Hmm.
And it could be that it's exponential. And again, I'm not an electrical engineer, but every time you try and go from 6 to 5, you're kind of doubling the noise, right?
Right.
And so it's much easier to go from 6 to 5 than it is to go from 6 to 0, which is what a global shutter is. And I was
Hmm.
reading something interesting,
Hmm.
and I hope I understood it, that it's actually the A9 III uses two pixels, one pixel to capture the image, and then another pixel to kind of hold the image and then
Mm.
move it to the buffer. I got to
Yeah.
do more exploring on that, but because of that, that's why the image quality is lower than expected, because it's actually using two pixels per pixel per pixel that you get. So does
Yeah.
that mean it's a 48 megapixel sensor? I'd
Good
like to
question.
explore that more.
Yeah.
I read that on Sony Alpha Rumors, and I was like, oh, that's really interesting. So they kind of need, because it's moving so fast, they need
Mm.
this kind of extra. They got this doubling up, but
Yeah.
it's losing them kind of a resolution. Anyway, if anyone knows anything about that, please write it in the comments below. Sorry, you go on, Bobby.
No, no, no. I think you're right. There's going to be a lot of things, but I also think AI is going to come into this more so than ever. And I think that what they can't do with the sensor, what they're limited, they can correct with AI. And I think that Sony being, I mean, we've been seeing this already with their smartphones. They've been really playing along a lot with the kind of the a new way of integrating the smartphone in with photography and videography, et cetera, et cetera. I expect to see more of that coming into play. And if you bring AI into the mix of it, and you get something that can say, okay, look, the global shutter is limited here, but with AI, we can clean this up. We can do this. I mean, I don't put it past them to bring this into something that's just going to blow our minds, because they did it with the Alpha One, which sort of got the industry going another step forward. And then after that came the Z9, which was like, hey, look, we're right there with you guys, which was kind of a shock, because they're like, wait a second, where did this, everybody's like, where did this come from a Nikon, right? But I think the Alpha 1 2, if it does come, and I think it maybe come towards the latter part of the year. I think that the A9 III is going to be the Olympics camera, obviously coming out in the spring. But we also have to realize this too. Everybody that's testing this camera, it is not a production camera. This is a pre-production camera still. They're letting people test
DP
it.
Review actually stated that theirs is a production camera.
Is it?
I'll double check that, but
Okay.
that's what I think I read yesterday.
Because when I talked to Sony here, they were saying that all the review units aren't. They said that they're still review units. So they were telling me that, because I think there's some photographers that do have it here in Singapore now, but they're just review units. So they're not claiming it as production. But who knows? You know what I mean? But I think that we do see an Alpha 1 2 that maybe be towards the latter part of 2024, and that's where I think we're going to see the step up in global shutter performance if they do come out with it.
Yeah, I won't read this whole article to try.
Yeah.
Actually, let me do a search on the word production. Please hold.
Yeah, no worries.
Just sing for us again, Bobby. Fly
Yeah,
me to the
again.
moon. Here we go.
But yeah, I gotta go on YouTube and actually see if there's any comments there as well. Let me see if I can pop onto YouTube on this side here.
So the sentence is, we've just had a chance to put a production Sony A9 III through our studio scene.
Wow. Okay.
So but it just because one region, there's probably, like often with these things, there's probably just a couple in the wild that are, and of course they can change firmware between now and then. So the notion of production is probably a little bit of inverted commas, if you know what I mean.
True.
Now, we had another QQQ. Let me find that one. Yes, this is from Bubba. G'day, Bubba. Great to have you here. Will we see more vendors ditch mechanical shutters this year? I absolutely think it's the future. I think it's the future because it means cameras have less moving parts, so less opportunity to break down. And I also think that they can replace the mechanical shutter with a sensor shield, which is also another way that you're protecting the camera. So it's a double positive for kind of camera owners and longevity of cameras and camera companies not having to repair. So that's kind of good for everybody.
Yeah.
We still recognize, just like global sensors have a difference in dynamic range and high ISO, stack sensors have also been tussling with that. And if anyone looks at the charts of an A1, a Z9, a Z8, you'll see that it's something like, I did a video about it, but there's something like a 3% difference in dynamic range of a Z9 versus a Z7 II, right? And that has a shutter. So still making cameras in the traditional way with a shutter is probably always going to deliver us the absolute in image quality. But what Sony and Nikon both did was bring stacked shutters so close to their current non-stacked shutters, non-stacked shutters, that it's pretty much negligible. So to answer that question, I do think so. And the reason, one of the reasons I bought the Fuji X-H2S was to understand, what does an APS-C stacked sensor look like? How does it behave? How is another company working with it? And uh, they didn't remove the shutter because I
Mm.
don't think theirs is quite as fast as Sony's and Nikon's. But if they're doing it in a camera that is, I think maybe 2 to 2.5 grand. Do you know, Bobby, a US, the XH2S,
Yeah, I think
somewhere
it's
in that.
about what, about 2 grand,
Yeah,
I think yeah,
yeah.
thereabouts.
So
Yeah.
if you're getting that at that price point, and that's now almost 2 years ago, I can see easily stacked mechanical shuttless sensors
Yeah.
becoming more and more common, definitely from now on. So,
Yeah.
will we see it in a Z6 III? Absolutely no idea, but maybe. Like, we've got all these rumors now, and it sounds like from the rumors it's a 24 megapixel sensor.
Mm.
So that kind of makes sense to me, because if you think about the A9 II, which I think is 5 or 6 years old,
Hmm.
that had a 24 megapixel stack sensor in it. So that tech is actually really, really old now, and it could
Yeah.
actually be trickled down for sure to mid-level cameras. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's I base all of this on kind of data and logic, and it's been in the market a long time, and all technology gets cheaper the longer it's in the market. So a good chance of it, I reckon.
Yeah, I think you're actually absolutely right on that. I think instead of, I mean, we're talking global shutter, but actually you're right. I think probably the biggest trend we're going to see this year is people moving away from the mechanical shutter and going to what Nikon's been doing very successfully with the Z8, Z9. And actually, I would say it would be smart if Nikon actually put it into the Z6 and the Z6 III, because then you differentiate it from the ZF a little bit more. So then people will say, okay, look, the ZF is still same megapixels, but the Z6 III will give you this on top of it, which it kind of makes sense that they would do it because, like you said, the technology's been around for quite some time. So why not? And being that it probably will be faster than the ZF, who knows?
Yeah, it's very exciting. We've got a question here
Yep.
we've got two questions. Question here from Ray. When will phone cameras and computational photography make all this moot? Ray's asking the big questions. Well, my answer to that, Ray, is never, because I am a carpenter and I love my hammer. In
Mhm.
other words, I am a photographer and I love photography. I love the hardware. I love the tactility. I love the fact that I have this little motion picture frame that I can
Mhm.
play with. I'm not holding this thing out in front of me trying to make a shot. It's to me, if this market will go on, even if it's just from car collectors.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, we're like people who love cars. Oh, hello, it's a party. I got this happening, Bobby. I don't know if it's going to happen again. There it is. Oh, I don't know. Anyway, um, so there's people that simply, to me, it's like fishing or whatever. You can go fishing by going to the supermarket, or you
Mhm.
can go fishing because you love being on your boat, going out,
Mhm. Mhm.
the wind in your hair,
Mhm.
and the whole process. So
Yeah.
I always, it doesn't matter what phones do. I reckon there's always going to be quite a couple of million, up to 10 million of us who just simply love that. How do you feel about that, Bobby? And I'm asking a guy who's got how many cameras on his back shelf there?
Quite a bit and quite a lot of phones too. I agree with you. I think the cameras will always be there. I think that the problem with camera companies today is that the UIs and the way that they integrate with the outside world is very archaic. We're still living in the 80s and 90s. If we look at it from a perspective, we're not connected. Nothing can go upload to the cloud. You can connect to your phone via Bluetooth, but you can't sync images to the cloud. Samsung tried it, I think, briefly, and other companies have tried it, but they've never done it really successfully. And I think that's the problem that's holding the camera industry back from a new generation of photographers and videographers is having a camera that can actually connect to the cloud. You take a photo, it's stored, and then go back. It's in your Lightroom, it's in your Capture One, or it's on a cloud drive, and you can just pull your images as you want them. You know what I mean? A UI interface that if you want to sync to social media, you can. If you want to post right away, a quick edit or filter, bomb, drop it in. Use a Nikon Creative Look and just drop it into wherever you want it to do. These things are not in our cameras yet, and the fact that they're not in 2020, now we're coming to 2024. Maybe it'll change this year, is quite shocking because that just shows you how backwards the camera industry is overall. We're talking about sensor technology and shutter speeds, but the connectivity is still way, way behind. Now, when it comes to smartphones, yes, will smartphones get better? Yes, of course. But you have the physical attributes of a small sensor. No matter how you shake a stick at it, that sensor is still going to be a limitation. Now, we are seeing companies like B-Script and other manufacturers out there creating Sandmark or small rig. They're all creating these rigs to sort of rig up your phone with better lenses, better optics to give you that more of that cinematic look or that more professional look. But you're still dealing with a small sensor. AI can kind of clear a lot of things up, but it's not going to do everything. But will we get to a point that it will equal a lot of these small APS-C cameras? Yeah, probably in the next 3 years. I would say within the next 3 years, the point and shoots are gone. The small APS-C cameras that are going to be, they may go the way of the, of the smartphone. But you also have to look at it this way. When you're using a smartphone outdoors in bright daylight, you can't really see the screen. And that's something that I've tried myself personally shooting video out there. I'm like, I want to shoot video in a bright day sunlight. I've got an ND filter on my smartphone camera to cut out the light, but I can't see the display. Displays can only get so bright because there's so much, heat that they can deal with in terms of the heat from the battery, heat from the display, everything else. So you have some limitations there that are going to still make cameras very, very relevant, even in years to come. But I think connectivity in cameras needs to change. And once that does change, I think we're going to see a new line of customers coming into play going, now I can connect to Instagram. Now I can connect to Facebook. Now I can connect to TikTok. And I can literally use my camera for everything I want or for a majority of things, and I'm happy with it.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm still, I don't know if I talked about this with you, but I would love to have, where's the camera? I've got about 500 here and I don't have one next to me. What's going on? I can't believe I'm live and I don't
You
know.
got a few cameras there yourself, Matt.
I want a camera that has a button, or it's just mapped to a function button where it's literally like you take the shot, you review it. It's like, that's gold. Hit a button and it's just, I don't know, in the cloud, on my phone, wherever it is, but it's that simple that you just tap a button. You know how now you can mark your shot to say don't delete it. I think that's a button I've never used on my camera. Let's map that and draw a picture of a cloud on it. So instead of locking it, we're sending it to the cloud and we're saving it. And I want it to be that easy, and I want it to always, it always is reliable and always works.
I agree.
Anyway, that's now. I had another question here, which was, and I think let me go back and find it. It's from Simon Norton, who asks, "This is not really the remit of this channel, but what about drones? What are we expecting for drones next year?" Well, I have owned a couple of drones over the years, and probably the reason I don't really talk about them on this channel is they come so hard and fast, and a lot of channels talk about them. What I've found, I suppose, because I still watch the market, and is that there is a lot of iterating going on. Drones they've become sort of very similar with their, they're either 4K and they have two lenses, or there's not many that are 8K, I don't think. And because of the laws that we have around drones, you can't fly them after dark here in this country. I don't know about other countries. So to me, drones have got a lot of problems just because the physical aspect that they're flying, and you can't fly them over people, and there's all these things. You can't fly them in cities, and all this stuff you kind of can't do. And so for me, it doesn't really matter how much tech they throw in them. I just want them to solve the problem that I can use them wherever they want. When drones first came out, all I wanted to do, as you can imagine, is fly the drone down one of my alleyways and get an epic cinematic shot of whatever. And it's like, oh, that's against the law. Okay, well, I'm just sad. So sure, I used it on my holiday when I went to Greece, and that was great. And, it's fantastic to see people like Casey Neistat continuing to break the law and use his drone however he sees fit. That's all fine. I love his work. He's talked about it on his channel, how he got in trouble with the aviation authorities here and there, and the New York authorities here and there. So drone tech, Bobby, have you got anything for us? Or out of your wheelhouse?
No, I mean, I played with drones, but I think that you're right. I think with the laws that they're becoming much more strict in more countries now than ever before, the technology is getting so much better that it becomes a security issue. Yeah. And it's not like before where, you could only fly a drone for so far. And then, it was limitations on cameras, et cetera, et cetera. Now we're talking, you can go miles and miles and miles away, or kilometers. And then the technology that you have for cameras, it gets into a privacy issue. It gets into a security issue, how high they can go up now. Honestly, I see the drone market outside of these very small sort of like hover drones or things that like you can just kind of do little selfies with, or follow you on a bike around the park, that are very low flying, very lightweight. I see the drone market really going more commercial and not going, and it's slowly kind of dying down. I feel
Yeah,
that,
I agree.
I mean, here in Singapore, we have 3 or 4 places we can fly drones. And certain times of the year, you cannot fly them, especially when we call it our National Day Parade, when the military comes out and they kind of showcase their stuff. And then everybody, it kind of is a celebration of the country. But the aircraft are flying daily, practicing, and there is restricted airspace. And around hotels or resorts, they're not allowing it. So, and these are great areas to shoot and capture moments, but you really can't do it. So, I I sort of lost interest over drones over the last few years because of that. I'm like, well, why would I spend $2,000-3,000 on a drone where I can't fly it anywhere? It literally sits in my backpack. And then, yeah, you got FPV, which is great, and that's fun, and that's a different genre of drones. But again, you've got to be in a certain situation, a certain place that you can fly them, that you can actually have some fun with it. So, and not get caught. So I don't know. I think it's going to go more commercial, except for those very small kind of consumer grade drones that are limited on camera functionality and distance. And then after that, that's it, which is, it's unfortunate, but security and it's pretty getting to be a very, interesting time in the world. So I think that
Yep.
these drones are one of the ways that they will probably combat that.
Yeah, well, safety issues. I mean, it's interesting that a lot of the authorities, and here in Australia is one of them, when your drone is under 250 grams, it frees things up a little bit. But think about 250 grams, that's quarter of a liter of milk.
Mm.
Um, I actually bought a Spark, which was before those drones started to come out, a
Yeah.
DJI Spark.
Hmm.
And the problem is those super light drones don't have the features that, guys like us, we want everything to be cinematic and epic. And, I want to be able to stick a Z9 on the bottom of the damn thing and get a shot with my planner. That's what I want to do. But of course, that's impossible. So,
That's a helicopter. That's a helicopter,
well,
Matt.
that's right. Yeah.
But
Sorry,
yeah,
yeah.
no,
So Ben Tucker saying drones are banned in most, if not all, national parks in the USA. And it's the same here. If you want to fly a drone in a national park, you have to get written approval. So, I mean, I get it. I see people flying and they're buzzing over your head, and it's like, that doesn't sound like fun. So,
mm,
I totally agree with you, Bobby. It's DJI just had massive, epic growth on the back of the drones, but I think it's something that is calming down a little bit
mhm,
now. And I mean, they're doing other amazing things with, of course, gimbals. And
yep.
they recently, about 2 years ago, put out the DJI mic, which is something that I own and I use. I don't talk about
Likewise.
mics a lot on this channel, but I actually test a lot of different mics behind the scenes. Interestingly, Rode came out with their updated version of their stuff, which now has a charging case and everything, and it's even better than the DJI mic. I have both, and um, but they're both kind of pretty similar. If you have one or the other, you wouldn't be upset. They
But the new
just
Rode has the 32-bit float, right? It has a 32-bit RAW,
Yes.
right?
So
So,
it helps with clipping. It's really as close to autopilot as you can get for sound, which of course
mhm,
when we're running and gunning, that's super duper helpful. Um, I have another question here.
yeah.
Excuse me, everybody. Oh man, I've put this note in the wrong spot. Here we go. Do you think, and this is from Willie Mays, great to have you here, Willie. Do you think that the Z6 III will be a true hybrid with 33 megapixels for 8K and also with USB-C to
Mm,
SSD record? Okay, it's a great question. Two parts to it there. I don't believe they'll give it 8K because I think that cannibalizes the Z8 and the Z9.
mhm,
The rumors are for 24 megapixels, but 6K. 6K is still fantastic. My Fuji X-H2S gives me 6K, and so that still allows you to crop and pan around the frame
mhm,
up to 50%. So you can go up to 150%. So it's really logical to me that that's a stepping stone between what we have today, or a ZF, which is
mhm,
4K, and the Z8. Like that makes perfect sense that we've got 4K, 6K, 8K.
mhm,
So that's my thoughts on Ks. And the other question was USB-C recording. Well, I believe it's something that's been requested a lot, and a lot of other cameras do it. So
mhm.
it would be logical to add that at some point. That's my thought. And Bobby, thoughts?
I agree. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be 8K as well. Like you said, that'll just cut into the Z8 sales, which is doing fantastic, by the way, and the Z9. So I think that'll stay at 4K or 6K. Sorry, 6K open gate probably. Definitely see open gate. I think that'll come into play. I do think it's going to be beyond 24 megapixels, though. I think if it stays 24, I'll be shocked because Z6, Z6 II, and Z6 III all 24. I feel that for them to get a little bit of a leap above the ZF. I'm going to go back and forth with ZF and ZF because I'm in Asia and we say it two different ways. But
well, you're both British and American. It is where the line meets, my good sir.
Yes. So I think 33 megapixels sounds like where it will go. That's my personal take because then that would sort of emulate the A7 IV sensor, which I'm sure now people are buying that sensor. Other companies are buying it, which makes sense. And then it kind of gives them that ability to go a little bit higher resolution on the video side of things. And I say open gate, USB-C recording. Yes, I think that's going to come into play. I think already Nikon's kind of preparing these things already for previous cameras. So why not add it into the Z6 III? Because I think they see the Z6 III is going to be a very powerful hybrid for them. You know what I mean? Like kind of what Sony looked at it for the A7 IV, for that matter, until the A7R5 came out and then sort of trumped that camera because of the AI dedicated chip for autofocusing. But that's Sony doing Sony. But I think Nikon probably will give a little bit more, probably better specs to the Z6 III, which, by the way, I have to address this, Matt. Is in our previous video we did together, I was saying there's no need for a Z6 III.
Yes.
And I have to eat my words publicly here to say I was wrong.
Well, I mean, maybe it's still a rumor, right? Maybe, but look, it's now 4 years. It'll be 4 years in later on in this year since the Z6 II. It's clearly time. Like everybody's feeling it and wants it. It's clearly the absolute middle of their range. So it's a very necessary camera to come out from my perspective. You know, it's going to be that. Like for me, it's like the ZF was a little bit of a teaser of what the Z6 III could be, and I don't, you know, you've got your black ZF, right? And I don't know if you noticed. I don't know how much you played with a Z6 or a Z6 II, for example, but going from the Z6 II to a ZF, it was like, oh, everything's faster, everything's more like it's a palpable difference. So to have a Z6 III that's sort of sitting in that space and being epically powerful and so on, like a ZF and more, at the sort of price point it's going to land at, it's going to be epic, and I do think it'll be very, very successful. So
indeed,
yeah, I just, it's highly logical that it should be coming soon. We can only hope. And if you were to ask me to guess when would it come, well, I'll refer back to that statement I made about financial quarters, and their next financial year starts April 1st, right? So if you want to have probably the camera that's going to sell more than anything else in 2024 for them, drop it day one of the next financial year, and then the 2024 financial year will look amazing. So look, it might come sooner than that. Who knows? But they have had this financial year has been epic, and it doesn't end until the end of March. So we'll see how we go. We'll see how we go on that front.
Got a couple. I see, looking at the comments here, there's one from 100 SR Young about Leica.
Oh, yeah.
Asking a quick question. Do you think Leica will be able to fix the M11P, which seems to fail with the content credentials chip? Yeah, so that's interesting. So I don't know, Matt, if you knew about this, the M11P that has this sort of content credentials chip sort of to, encrypt the image. And they're the first camera to come to market with it. I think Nikon's coming out with software, firmware to sort of, they're going to put into the cameras, and so is Sony.
Yep.
It's interesting. I think Leica's got a few things they got to work out with the firmware on the M11P still, and they probably will address it, but they will take their time to make sure that it's there. But I still think this technology is in its infancy. So I'm kind of like, I'm not too worried about it right now. I mean, to be frank with you, it's, look, you take a screenshot of an image, all those credentials are gone.
Yeah.
So, while I applaud the push to, put a fingerprint on our images, the reality of it is a screenshot on our laptop or our computer or our phone removes everything. And the screenshots are getting so good now, then what? So I don't know. The jury's out on that. I would just rather focus on the quality of the images and the processing and everything else, and let that technology, when it becomes much more mature, then it'll come into play. And I'm sure Leica will fix it. But as it stands right now, I mean, yeah, I would be more concerned about other firmware fixes than just the credentials side of it.
Yeah, well, I read somewhere, can't remember where I read it, that and I'm yet to make a video about it, but Nikon have said that it's gonna, I'm pretty sure gonna come to the Z8, maybe sorry, Z9, maybe Z8. Not that they said that, but I'm guessing perhaps to all the cameras via firmware. So,
Yeah.
um, but I totally agree with you that it's pretty easy to work around it. And, we'll just see. I suppose the thing about a screenshot is if you're submitting a raw file, let's say anybody who's interested in provenance says the only way we'll accept the provenance of this is that it's a raw file. And if you
True.
take a screenshot, it's not a raw file. And you could take a screenshot with your camera, but it's not going to look any good. So
Right.
I think it's still going to sort of slow things down. And if you're a hacker trying to remove this watermark, then you've got to have a few more skills. But give it 5 years, and there'll probably be an app you can download to do it. But look,
True.
anything they can do, I think, to help the general public is a fantastic thing. All right, well let's get back to our predictions and
Yeah.
alphabetically Canon. Although I have a few more questions. Sorry, no, I'd like to address a few more questions. We've got Wayne. Wayne, it's great to have you here. Do you think the Z6 III will have active cooling, and do you believe it's necessary? I don't think it will. I think active cooling, you mean a fan. A fan means exhaust ports. Exhaust ports means that they are not environmentally sealed. We saw Canon do this with the R5 versus the R5C. And if you have a look at the R5Cs, gosh darn, the back of that thing looks like a Star Destroyer with its exhaust ports. It's pretty epic. Now, I know it does the job. I know it means your R5 doesn't overheat, but yeah, I don't see it happening for a camera will be an extremely affordable all-rounder. That's what I think.
Well, I think Canon kind of, I don't understand the R5C. I really don't. And this is no offense to any Canon users out there. I love their camera systems, but the R5C just seemed to me of Canon not wanting to commit to actually making a true hybrid camera system because they don't want to encroach on their cinema line, which I think they're going to have to give up. I mean, Sony's already doing it. Everybody's going to be doing it. Canon's going to have to do it. The R5C to me it just made no sense. Having said that, though, if you look at the S5 II and the S5 IIX from Lumix or Panasonic for that matter, they do have active cooling inside of it, and they are very small cameras. And the way that they've implemented them, you don't even know the fans are on. It's not like they're there. They're kind of inside the top area of the camera system where the viewfinder is. There's little vents there. It's a really ingenious design, and they were very good with it with the S1H. And I would say that they've improved on it with the S5 II and S5 IIX. So, I think every camera out there probably going to have some sort of cooling, some sort of active cooling. Could it be from the way they design the body? Would there be some sort of fan? It depends on how much that they want to push the video aspect of the Z6 III. And I think that they're going to push it a bit more because they are seeing some success with the Z9 and Z8 now in terms of video. But they haven't gotten to those cameras are still at a premium. But if you bring it into a Z6 III at a very affordable price and you're saying, look, we're going to make this a very good hybrid, very comparable to the S5 II and S5 IIX, which have been quite successful for Panasonic considering the S series of cameras, I could see it happening if they have some pretty good engineers in the back room making it happen. It could be very, very interesting how they do it. And I'm not going to put it past them, but the R5C, I'm sorry.
I made a video about it, which was pretty scathing and never put it out because I didn't want to be in that space. But it was like, why does it have no IBIS? Why does the battery only last a really short space? There was all these caveats, and it was like, okay, no worries.
Yeah, it made no sense.
Next question is from Dr. Robert Goldman. How will they differentiate a Z7 III from a Z8? Could the Z7 disappear? Great question, Robert.
Yeah.
Do you want to take this one first, Bobby, or I can go? No,
sure. I think it's going to tap onto something that we said in our video that we talked about, and I think I guess this is where you mentioned it, where I would agree with you. Higher megapixel,
Yep.
What do you think, Matt?
Yeah. And it's also back to that discussion around shutters. I
Mm,
think like the Z7 II today is slower. And when we say slower, 10 frames per second or whatever,
mhm,
but it is Nikon state and their representatives publicly state that if you want the absolute highest quality Nikon camera today, it is the Z7 II. Now, the
mm,
Z8 and the Z9 are a hair behind it, but that's what they state. It's the
mm,
Z7 II. So even if they continued along the lines of a Z7 III, still got a mechanical shutter, not going for speed, not going for large bodies, not going for video, it'll
mm,
still shoot video, but lower end spec video.
mm.
Uh, and because it's got a shutter, it can have a different type of sensor, which is a slower sensor, which gives you less noise, which gives you more dynamic range. And maybe they actually work on increasing dynamic range, increasing ISO.
Mm,
I mean, the holy grail to me is just as I don't, as a streetscape or even portrait exterior photographer, the more dynamic range you can achieve and have that access to the highlights or the shadows
mhm,
when you've done a shoot outside, the better. So there are
mhm.
some people, and this is why we have Hasselblads. This is why we have 16-bit Hasselblads
Yeah.
and so on. That that's why it's there. So that is a potential. It doesn't even have to be megapixels. It can just be absolute image fidelity, right?
Right.
And the thing I love about some of the technology that gets created is, everybody's thinking about speed and
Mm,
everybody's thinking about 8K and everyone's thinking about autofocus.
mhm.
So quietly, there's three engineers in Nikon or whatever, and their job is dynamic range. And quietly, 4 years later, out comes a sensor where we go, oh, I don't know, two more stops of dynamic range. We've gone from 14, 15 to 17, which of course exists. Red cameras are up at those sort of numbers.
Mhm,
Imagine that. Imagine if that's your Z7 III. So
mm.
maybe there's a few more megapixels, but diffraction is still a thing. But there are other places they can take it. Plus, it just becomes because what's amazing about the Z6 and the Z7 is they're really small cameras. Like
Mm.
they are small, but they pack a punch if image fidelity is what you're after. So
True.
I still see that having quite it's a bit bigger than being a niche. I think it's a bit bigger than that. So I hope that answers your question, Dr.
Yeah.
Robert. I really think there is a place they could take the Z7 III. Clearly, the Z8 is about being an epic all-rounder, speed, 8K, autofocus, all of that goodness, along with epic image quality. But maybe they can get more. Maybe they
Yeah.
can. Got another question here from Ben Tucker. With the popularity of ZF, do you
Mhm.
think Nikon will continue to make their retro style cameras? Maybe a full frame Nikon rangefinder style camera. Well, indeed, this is something that we talk
Mm.
about, Bobby. I can see you smiling. Go, go,
All right. This is what I'm thinking here. I
do it.
think that the ZF has been a huge hit for Nikon, massive hit. And I'm thinking that when the dust settles, it probably will even be a bigger hit than the Z8 and Z9. And it's brought a lot more people into looking at Nikon than ever before. And because it's at a price point that's more affordable, the design everybody likes. Some people say it's a bit big or whatever, but chunky. But that depends on the person. I think we're going to get. I don't know about a rangefinder, but when you look on Facebook, you look at all these ZF groups, and you see all the red stripes going down that left side of the camera where the grip is, and they keep emulating an F3. What would Nikon say if I was in the office of Nikon right now and I was working there? I would say, guys, let's make a high resolution 45 megapixel Nikon ZF3 with this F3 design in a more sort of pseudo modern look. I think
Yep.
that would be a huge, huge hit. The image fidelity of the Z7 II, because obviously that'll be probably replaced by a Z7 III, as you just beautifully eloquated there, with higher megapixel and optimal image quality. But a Z7 II sensor, obviously with the new processor, so you're getting that same autofocusing speed as the Z8, Z9 respectively, but in an F3 body design. That thing they'd be sold out for a year. You would be on a waiting list for a year for that thing. And they price it reasonably. 35, what is that, 2000 USD right now for that one? Is it about 2000 for
For
the
the
ZF?
ZF.
You do about 3000, 3002 for that? For a
Yeah.
ZF3? People
Yeah.
will buy that up in a heartbeat.
And I have to say I was at the Nikon Museum just 3 months ago in Japan, and I
Mm,
got to see the rangefinder cameras sort of in the flesh,
mm,
and they are deeply beautiful artifacts, almost more beautiful to me than the FM range of cameras.
yep.
So just as an artifact, I personally would be very excited about that. And then to go and shoot with it, that's the next level. But gosh, they're a gorgeous camera. So
Oh
to
yeah.
answer that rangefinder thing, there's a market for it. I think people would be equally nostalgic for it as the ZF. And and as Bobby said, I don't think there's any limit to what
Mm,
retro permutations Nikon could bring to us.
yeah.
I think they've absolutely opened a Pandora's box here,
Yeah.
and I think it'll be a range of cameras that continues to flow. Now we've got more questions flowing. That's awesome, but we will get a little bit to our original plan, which was to
Yeah.
speculate on the future. Let's jump into the first letter in the alphabet. We're still not there yet. Canon. And well, I suppose the high level things are R1.
Mhm.
Is it ever coming? Maybe an R5 II. It's about time.
Yeah.
And I even saw speculation of an R3 too. What are your thoughts, Bobby? And of course, last year Canon did a lot of entry level stuff. They put out so many entry level cameras
Yeah.
that I lost track. So I don't think they should be putting out more entry level cameras. I think they've got to focus on the higher end of their market now. What are you thinking? Talk to me.
I agree with you 100% on that. I think that they lost a lot of traction and buzz in the media landscape. I mean, these, and look, we have to understand is that, yes, we love to talk about the high end side of cameras and photography, but there is obviously a large section of the population that can't afford those things. So obviously the R50s, the R100s, the R7s, these are much more affordable cameras, and they're all very good cameras. Actually, they're pretty good cameras in what they present. I mean, I like the R50 quite a bit. I think going forward, we are going to see the R1. I think that's pretty much a given. The R1 is going to come out around Olympics time, and I think that's going to be. It may not be global shutter like the A9 III, but I think it's going to be very close to what we're seeing from the Z9 in terms of the speed. Probably be higher megapixels. I'm guessing 60, but faster frames per second. And I'm afraid to know what the price point is because Canon is they do not like to going in inexpensively. So that probably we could see a camera that reaches around $7,000 USD thereabouts. I don't know. I think it's gonna be pretty expensive. R5 II, I think we are going to see an R5 II. R6 II came out, was a good success, pretty successful for them. R5 II will be a massive success. And I think the R5 II will be the camera for the majority of people out there that want the image quality of, let's say, an R1, but necessarily don't need the speed of the R1. I think the R5 II is going to be that sweet spot. I think there's going to be better cooling, so you're going to have better video performance, so you're not going to have those issues with 8K. But you have to give Canon credit; they were the first ones to really sort of put it out there and say, "Hey, look, we're gonna fix it with firmware." You know, obviously by pressure of the community to do so. But I think we're going to see a lot better improvement in that. But yeah, I think they need to get away from the budget cameras for quite some time, just to sort of get their name into the mix again of the buzz of people talking about Canon. Because for the last year, they've been quite quiet. You know, even from my side here, I mean, there was not much happening. I mean, outside the R7 and the R6 II was like okay, but if the R6 II was just a slightly bump up from the R6, so it was like, all right, great, but what's next? You know, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, and they gave us the R8, I think, and an R10.
Yeah, I'm lost. I don't even know R8, R7,
Yeah, no,
R
you're right about the
R3.
other ones, but there was and then was there an R100? Did I make that up? So there
No,
was.
there's R100 too,
Yeah,
R50, R100.
yeah,
There's a lot of them. Yeah, it's confusing.
yeah. Yeah. No, I think the R5 is 4 years old. It's
Mm,
time. I think the R1. I mean, from my perspective, if Nikon was this late with their flagship,
mm.
we'd be hearing basically Armageddon, end of world, end of days. Arnold Schwarzenegger would be walking in, sort of saying, "I'll be back. It's all over."
Mm,
Whatever, right?
mm.
Because they don't have a flagship. How I don't quite understand why the same narrative doesn't appear when Canon doesn't have a flagship, and this thing's been rumored for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's just an interesting piece of psychology about the world that we live in, and we don't have to
Mm,
dwell upon it. But it's really interesting to me that it's not here and
mm.
doesn't seem to be a big deal. So I don't know. Is it not a big deal forever, or does it come? I mean, it has
I,
to. Surely
I
the
mean, I
tech.
think the R3 did sort of, it gave the people what they wanted with the R3, which was an improvement over, of course, the 1DX Mark III. So the R3 sort of, tempered those expectations. And I think everybody knows the R1 is coming when they look at the Olympics 2024. Okay, we're going to see the camera, but the R3 is good enough for us now. It's fast enough for what we need. So the R1 will just be the icing on the cake for those who need it. So I guess you could say that maybe that's part of the reason where, as with Nikon, they were very, very quiet for some time. Z6, Z6, Z7, Z6 II, Z7 II. Everyone's like, where's the Z8? Where's the Z9? Where's this, this fast camera? Where's this one at? But then, you know what I mean? Then they finally released it.
Well,
But
actually, they climbed up onto the top turnbuckle, went
yeah,
and jumped off into the ring, and then just bring it. That's what the Z9 was. Sorry, I
true,
just
true.
a little small celebration there, folks. Sorry, I got a bit excited for a second. So yeah, that's Canon. Any or all of those three cameras could or should happen. Maybe the R3 II is the least likely because
Agree.
it's not that old. It's only two and a half something years old.
Mm.
So R5 II and R1, most likely. Our predictions for 2024, bring them down. Any lenses? I mean, Canon has been putting out some really interesting wide-angle lenses. They
Yeah.
recently put out a 200 to 800, which people seem to be very excited about.
Mm.
So they're certainly still kicking it when it comes to lenses. So yeah, I think we expect a big year for Canon. Next, alphabetically on our list is Fuji. Now I'm going to
Ah.
hand more over to Bobby for Fuji because I know less about that world. Bobby,
Okay.
talk to me
No.
because you own a few, don't you? I
Yeah,
think.
well, I used to quite. I review a lot of Fuji films actually,
There you go.
Fujifilm cameras. So
There you go.
I'm a fan of Fujifilm. I think I love what they're doing. I love the innovation that they come up with, and they know their niche, they know their market, and they excel in that area. They're not trying to compete with everybody else, but they know where they excel at. Okay, Fujifilm. Let's talk about it. I think we're going to see the sequel or the next version of the X100 series of camera. Was a huge, massive hit for them last year. It just came out of nowhere. Honestly, it was the TikTok side of it that just got everybody going. Like, wait a second, it looks like a film camera, and the images look like film. And everybody in the Fuji world was like, "We've been doing this for how many years?" And the X100V has been out for already a few years already, and now it kind of had this resurgence in the market, which made it a premium camera. Couldn't get it. People were paying well over list on the camera on eBay and other camera markets, and it just became a massive success. And then from there, obviously, that kind of filters through to the other cameras that they have, the X series of cameras, XT5, which came out last year, which was very, very good as well. But I think we're going to see that camera coming into play. And if we look at what's currently coming out into the lineup, obviously they've been coming out with 40 megapixel APS-C sensors. I'm thinking we're going to see 40 megapixel, probably IBIS in it, which would be great, and probably better video functionality, which sort of kind of goes in line with how Fujifilm does things. I mean, when you look at the lineup of cameras, there's not really a lot of surprises that come into play. The XT5 is like their flagship sort of. I mean, the XH2 now that in the XH2S respectively, XH2 was 40 megapixel, first high resolution APS-C sensor, and that trickled down to the XT5, and I think that'll trickle down to the respective cameras going down the lineup. And then obviously you have the XH2S, which is their sports or sort of their video camera. And there was rumors of it being a full frame sensor. I don't think that would happen. I wish it did, but I think that I think they're going to stick with APS-C with 40 megapixels, leaf shutter in the lens like it has currently. Probably a better lens, more sharper, better optics. But I think that's where we're going with this. That to me is where I think that's going to be happening very, very soon, as a matter of fact. And I think we are going to see something else in medium format. I
Oh,
think the X1. I'm sorry. The GFX 102 is a fantastic camera. I use that a lot. Love that camera. But I think at a price point, Fujifilm is also aware that they want to bring medium format into the full frame section of things, into the sector, and they want to bring it more affordable. So I thought originally there would never be a GFX 100 S2, But I don't know, talking to friends and talking to people in the industry out there and seeing and talking about sales, the 102 has been doing very, very well, but there does seem to be a market for an S version of this. So maybe we'll see something like that as well. Don't know. That one is up in the air, but I think these are going to be the two big announcements that we'll see from Fujifilm the first part of the year. Later on, we'll probably see just some of the more inexpensive cameras kind of come into play. Let's say the more budget friendly cameras that will fill out with the newer sensors. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Fujifilm. What are your thoughts?
Well, Roger McCarthy is asking Fuji XE5. Will it happen? Is that a question mark? I
I
mean,
think
I know Seth loves he just bought the new GFX medium format
Mhm.
and just, you know, absolutely adores it.
Oh,
I
awesome.
was very close when I bought my XH2S. It was like, do I get an XH2S or do I get one of the GFXs, the 50 megapixel ones? I kind of regret not getting that now
Mm,
because obviously I've got more APS-C and 35 mm cameras in my life than I have small medium format cameras.
mm.
So I'm now very excited to pick up something. And you might have done this.
Mm.
Have you adapted any of your F glass to the GFX? Because that's something I really want to do. I've still got a lot of my F mount lenses.
Yeah, I've tried it before. It actually works quite well. Depending on the focal length, you might have
Yes.
to do the 35 millimeter crop on the camera, so you get,
Yes.
you don't get any vignetting. But some lenses do perform better than others, and you'd be surprised. It gives a nice, very interesting look. As a matter of fact, this what I'm streaming on right now is the GFX 102.
Hello,
Yeah,
baby. That's pretty
yeah.
exciting. That's the new one, and it's got the new
This
autofocus and everything.
Yeah, that's why
So,
I can do this now, because previously it was, yeah, I mean, it was decent. I mean, but not like I can do it now. I can actually shoot full videos with it, and the autofocus for video is fantastic.
well, I was going to
But
say, it felt like we were looking at you at 8K and medium format, and I was right. No, no, I'm joking, but it looks absolutely it looks absolutely beautiful.
thank you, thank
We've
you.
got we got questions flying everywhere. So yeah, look, so yeah, very exciting. Fuji, look forward to what they're going to do. It sounds like there's interesting stuff going on from them, and
Yeah.
I think and Seth said in the comments, he said something. I can't remember what he said. Anyway, it's a long time ago. Seth's gone.
Yeah.
Thanks for being
Jo-
here, Seth. Also,
uh,
please,
John
we're
Ishii came out with a Fujifilm question just here as well. Let me, if you want to
oh
answer
yeah.
that one. Says, Bobby, what are your thoughts on the GFX 102 that it will not and does not shoot 16-bit in continuous? Um, Honestly, I don't care like about if it shoots 16-bit in continuous or not. And the reason I say that, John, is actually because in continuous, it's about capturing the moment. 16-bit for me is, yeah, I mean, Matt, you've done, art, fine art photography. I guess you would be best to answer this. When you're doing still subjects, of course, you want to have the highest resolution, but if you're trying to just capture fast moving subjects, do we need 16-bit or can we make it do with 14-bit? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I mean, we've clearly all been making do with 14-bit for an extraordinary amount of time. And we've been shooting fine art with
Yeah.
Sony's, Nikon's, Canon's, Fuji's, the non 16-bit Fuji's, Panas, and everybody else under the sun. I mean, as I said with the Z7 III,
Mhm.
um, maybe that's the sort of thing that they could bring to the party there as well.
Mhm.
It's like this is our ultimate image beast. But
Mhm.
you've all got to keep in mind, and there's some interesting numbers which I can't drag out of my memory right now. But
Mhm.
the difference in file size
Mhm.
between 14-bit and 16-bit is like you go from billions to like you go from 1 billion to 12 billion
Mhm.
colors, shades of
Mhm.
gray. Don't know if everybody knows how it works, but it's shades of gray per photo site.
Mhm.
And to record and store all that information is just immense.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, I'm living very happily shooting 14-bit HE star, which I
Mhm.
still don't know how they're throwing away 40% of the file size and still giving us an image that's pretty much the same. So,
Yeah.
if you applied that technology to 16-bit, then it would make it smaller. But you've just, I think a bit of a problem where camera manufacturers are facing is that
Mhm.
everybody wants more speed, and if you
Mhm.
give people 16-bit, you're going to have to take away speed. And of
Yeah.
course, you might be able to switch it, but I don't know. There might be more
Yeah.
things going on there. Or like a good car company, they're
Mhm.
saving it. They're saving
Yeah.
it for later. Why are we buying the Z94? Well, it's 16-bit.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess John was saying also in the comments, he's saying that it's because there people are upset that Fujifilm didn't disclose this. And I mean, I can only say this. I mean, I what can I say here? I'll be doing a video on this. I will say, from my personal experience working with Fujifilm, is that especially with the GFX 100 too, there was a lot of information that wasn't given till right at launch, till launch on the camera system, and we had a pre-production unit that we were doing a review on, and there were a lot of specs that just weren't given, and I think for the most part, Fujifilm didn't talk about the continuous side of it because most people with medium format don't shoot continuous. They give it to us as a feature, but I don't think it's something that they were talking about like, oh, we need to be very clear that 16-bit continuous needs to happen. I think if you look at most camera systems out there, I think when you shoot a higher frame rates, as you mentioned, Matt, that you will lose a little bit of image quality. So I think that was sort of a given. Perhaps they maybe could have explained it more to some people that wanted to do that, but I never looked at it as they were hiding something. I just looked at it as the fact that there were just, they were concentrating more on the video side of things, more on other features, and they probably weren't thinking about, okay, we're going to talk about how many bits for color depth is it going to be for continuous versus still. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it adds complexity. And look, John Ishii very rightly saying that for high-end commercial work, like if you're shooting for Vogue or you're shooting for Time or, that level of client, there's no question that you want 16-bit for everything that brings.
Sure.
And this is where I'm wearing the three hats. There's what I want, there's what everybody wants, and there's what camera companies can kind of achieve. And I suppose at the end of the day, they're trying to hit 99% of the market. And John, I personally would love, and I don't know if you've seen my pretty old videos now, I would love a ZM, and that is a Z medium format camera. I would absolutely love that. And I believe it's possible. And I'd love it to be 16-bit. That's what I'd love. We've got this extraordinary glass. Like the Z glass is extraordinary. You and I both we both own and love the Planner, and it's taking us to an almost medium format sort of space. So I'm with you 100%, John. And it's just cameras and the fact that they're, your Nikon and your Sony and your Canon are kind of mass, they're mass market, and your Hasselblad and your Fuji GFX is more niche. And bring on the ZM is all I can say. Bring us that 16-bit with that sensor. Let me stick my Planner on it. Remember, the Planner's got the biggest image circle yet. Does that mean it's a secret weapon? Is it a secret weapon? Is that actually the first medium format lens? I don't know. I'm just making stuff up here, but it would be very exciting. It would be very exciting. All right, should we move? Should we move on to Nikon
let's do it.
as we go alphabetically? Because we talked about Leica. We threw Leica in there already at the start. So and we've talked about the Z6 III. So I think the Z6 III is pretty interesting. Now, we did get a question from Frames TM. Frames, great to have you here. Now, his question, I need to find it because it was actually quite a long time ago. Matt and Bobby, Sony's going to focus on video this year. Will Z get a cine body? Now, this is something we touched on a little bit last time. Any thoughts on that, Bobby?
No, I don't think so. Because in order to do a cine body, they're going to have to. Well, I mean, they don't have to necessarily create cine lenses, but I think what Nikon is doing very, very well, and I'm glad that they're doing this, is they are creating hybrid cameras in each respective segment of their camera lineup. Z9, a true hybrid camera, probably more of a hybrid camera than most other cameras out there. Okay, Z8, equal. Now we'll probably see it coming down to the Z6 III if that comes about, or even the ZF is a great hybrid camera system. I think for them to do a cinema camera, I don't know how many people would go in to buy that cinema camera, because you have to think about it now. The market in the cinema world is already very, very mature. Red, Ari, Sony now with the Murano, Canon. I mean, is there room for another, in Panasonic? I have to talk about Panasonic as well. They make cinema cameras. They're huge in the cinema world. And then Fujifilm makes glass. I mean, is there room for another cinema camera manufacturer out there like Nikon? I mean, or is that just wasted R&D, and they could put that towards making better cameras that are hybrids for content creators out there and for photographers? I'd rather see them do the latter than make a cinema camera. I don't think it makes any sense. you know. And if they do a cinema camera, that means they're going to have to hold back features from the consumer lineup of cameras, so the cinema camera gets some, you know, some golden glitter on their on parade. So, you know, I think what they're doing right now is the smart move. I think there's been talks of a cinema camera. I just don't think it's going to happen. What are your thoughts?
Look, the way I look at it is all of their competitors, well, not all of them, but a lot of their competitors do it.
Mm,
They seem to be able to juggle cine lines and camera lines. Yes, we do see a little bit of crippling from Sony and
mm,
Canon because of that.
mm,
Um, it's interesting because I feel like Nikon is telegraphing to us with their firmware updates that they're actually feeling quite happy to share high-end features with a ZF and with a Z8 that you find on
mm,
a Z9, for
mm.
example.
Yeah.
So, and they seem to have been ridiculously strategic around their product line and where everything's sitting and how it's like Apple. You know how Apple managed to go, here's the iPad, here's the entry level, you get these features.
Mm,
If you just spend another 300, we're going to give you these features. Oh, and another 600 and you'll get these features. I kind
right.
of feel like Nikon's been super strategic, and I would say that, you know, we were talking about how the Z6 III would be 6K and the
Mm,
previous one was 4K, and then we've got the 8, you know, all this sort of, it's really, you know, I feel like there's a really big flow chart in some room that
mm,
maps out everything. I don't know. I think that this year, whatever, the strongest push for me around any logic around this idea is that it's a market. It's just simply a market they're not in,
mm,
and if they want to grow, it's a market they're not in. They've clearly pushed hard with the Z8 and the Z9, so they've now got the technology rolling. It's
mm,
been, you know, the Z8 and the Z9 are very high end when it comes to video, but
mm,
obviously not ergonomically in the sense of traditional cine cameras, but they're doing the work and they're
mm,
giving us lenses, and they're giving us lenses that don't breathe. Uh-huh.
mm,
And they're giving us PZ lenses, so video,
mm.
you know, power zoom lenses.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Well, that's just for video. So I don't know. There's stuff.
You know, I was talking to a friend of mine and he buys and rents cinema equipment. And I was talking to some DPs out here as well. And I was asking him, I said, what do you think about a Nikon cinema camera? And they were both like, do you know right now that even the cinema world, things are changing so dramatically that cameras are getting smaller and smaller? And it's not necessarily you need to even to shoot a commercial, you don't need a cinema camera anymore.
Yeah.
You can use, most people are using A7S3s, or they're
Yeah, or
using,
an FX3 or
you
whatever.
know, FX3, or I
Yeah.
mean, look, the creator was shot in an FX3, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I really think, yes, Nikon's been teasing a lot of video features and they've been giving us a lot of great features, but I think that's what's made them stand out right now and made them such an attractive buy for so many people in the market, is that they're giving us all this technology in one camera. Because if you do cinema, look, everything is going smaller and smaller and smaller. What would be the reason for it? What would be the need for it? Because you've already got rental houses. Because I talked to my friends, they said we're not going to buy another camera. We've got Reds, we got Aris, we got Sonys, and Canon is kind of dying down a little bit on the cinema side of it as well, because they really haven't come up with anything, you know, recent as of late. So with this market, do you need, for them, it's like, how much can we buy that we're going to actually make money on renting or make it for
Yeah.
production houses?
That's
You
fair
know?
enough. I mean, it's a long game,
Yeah.
and you know, if I was in the production meeting, what are we doing next year? Or what are we, you know, back in 2021, what are we doing in 2024?
Yeah.
It'd certainly be, look, this is a long game for us, and uh, don't expect to turn a profit on this line for 5 years. And that's business. Like if you enter a new market where there's lots of incumbents,
Mhm.
you expect to not make money and you expect to not get market share for a long time.
Mm.
But if you're going to bring best in class, then, you know, I mean, we all have to back ourselves and believe in ourselves, and
Yep.
they're the underdog with nothing to lose. So
Mm.
there you go. I hope that answers your question, Frames.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
there's market for them to do it, and maybe they can bring something new. They're certainly bringing us astonishing lenses. Not that they're that different to the astonishing lenses from other companies, but, you know,
Right.
it's good stuff.
Indeed.
We seem to be having a buffering issue I'm seeing here. Hopefully
Are
we're
we?
I we're still going. It's just my
Yeah.
internet connection. That's the problem. My kids are
Oh.
probably playing video games and watching Netflix right now. That's probably what's going on, and they're flooding. I might just write a quick note to my wife to ask them to get off. But moving on with Nikon, the next thing would be what else? So what else might come out this year? You can't imagine it's just one camera. And I was thinking about this and thinking
Mm,
about the fact, well, APS-C. So the most recent APS-C Z30, and that's now 2 years ago, like it's
mhm,
2022. And then we had the ZFC, which is a bit, it's not just a standard camera, it's a retro
mm.
camera. And so when was the last Z APS-C camera? It's the Z50, right?
Oh yeah, it's
And
been a long
that's
time.
like, I think it's 2019. So my next biggest vote is for a, Z50 replacement or a Z50 upgrade, XP 7, and that'll be probably quite a powerful camera.
And not that
Um,
flip down weird display kind of thing, right?
yeah, get
Yeah.
rid of that. Get rid of that because nobody wants that. Stick the one that's on the Z30 or the ZF.
Yeah.
Give it a USB-C port. Give it XP 7. It'll have ridiculous autofocus. It'll probably still stick around,
Mm,
24, 26 megapixels. Who knows? They might not even upgrade that. I think
mm,
they should from an optics perspective, but I think Nikon are really smart at going, you know what? This is a good resolution to give you, optimal image quality, and we're not just playing a megapixel war. Anyway, for
yeah.
me, it's time for
Mm,
either a Z50 Mark II or something else.
I agree.
That's my
I agree.
thoughts.
Yeah, no, I think you're right on that. I think they need to upgrade the APS-C lineup. And if you look at B&H and Adorama, there's a lot of great sales on these cameras right now. I mean, they were one of my. I did a video a few weeks back about some of the top cameras under 1,000 US dollars, and there are a ton of Nikons in there. Z30, Z50, they're all in there. And the Z30, I think they really need to upgrade this camera. IBIS. Better autofocusing. You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
get a little bit better in terms of the image quality out of this. That will be a fantastic camera for content creators out there. The Z30 is already a really nice camera. It's a fun camera to use, but I mean, when you come into using, let's say, the ZF and you got IBIS and you got all this stuff for video, you're thinking, yeah, obviously different price point, but you're like, okay, come on, Nikon, give us a Z30 with IBIS, give us a Z30 with better autofocusing, and it would be a hit. It would do very, very well. But what they need to do is improve on the smaller lenses. They got to improve on those smaller lenses. Everything they got is big, Plana, big, 51.2, big, 85, big. But then you get these smaller cameras, and then you got to have some sort of grip to carry these lenses. So they got to come out with some really small. They got the 1.8s, but they got to come out with some smaller lenses that even f2s that can be compact, can be easy to carry around. It can match the ZF, it can match the Z50 to whatever it may be. And it's just a very easy lens to use. You know what I mean? Because right now everything's very big. That's my
Yep.
personal.
Yep. Well, look, that's a really fair call, and I think it's well recognized that native Z small lenses there aren't a lot.
Mm.
Something that I get a lot across my desk is somewhere between 6 and 10 brands of third-party
Oh
lenses.
yeah.
A lot of them are APS-C, a lot of them are small, some of them are retro, some of them have apertures. A lot of them are really good. In my last live stream, I was using the Viltrox Pro
Mm.
27 1.2. That is a cracker of it. That's a really good lens.
Mm.
And it's a 1.2, really affordable. So I agree with you, but I also think there are actually there are a lot of options filling the gap. And if you think about it, that's actually a really good strategy. People buy a ZF or a Z50 because it's really affordable.
Mm.
Guess what? You can buy all this third-party glass that's pretty good
Yeah.
and it's really affordable. So you're kind of getting the glass to match your camera. But no, I agree. There could be a few more things to come out in APS-C specific
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Now moving on. What about lenses? Are there any? I feel like Nikon is now in the exotic phase of
Mm.
their. They've got the basics out. The basics are out. They've given us a couple of exotics just to whet our appetite for the
Yeah.
future. Is there any fantasy lenses? And please in the comments, and don't forget to like as well. In the comments, please let us know. Are there any lenses that you are desperate for, looking for? Is it the 200 f2, for example? Is it a tilt
Ooh.
shift? Is it a, I think I saw some weird rumor about a 24 to 400 or something,
Mm.
zoom with,
Wow.
which sounded,
Wow.
I don't know if I read that in a comment or whatever, but these are some of the things that people want. And uh
I think they
there's
need to come out
definitely
with
some
a
wides, like a 10 or a 14 mil prime. Sorry, go Bobby, go.
no, no, no. I know. I think you're right. I think I would love to see. Obviously, we talked earlier on the 35 1.2, right? That has to come out, and I'm
Oh
sure
yeah,
it's going to come out very,
it's
very
on the
soon.
roadmap. It exists. I mean,
Yeah,
we don't know it's a 1.2, but it's on the same
yeah,
line, so it has to be.
it's
Yeah,
going to be.
yeah,
I would love to see them come out with an F2 lineup of lenses, small, compact, retro design,
nice.
match the ZF,
Yeah,
because that, and not the SC version, but something a little bit better in terms of build quality, just a little bit better. You know what I mean? More metal construction,
yep.
and if an F2 lineup of lenses, 35, 28, 24, 50, these are home run lenses that they pair well with the ZF. They could be full frame lenses. They could also go to the APS-C cameras as well. And I think it would be huge hit, because that's the thing with the ZF, is that now after the 40 and the 28, you're like, what else can I use? The 1.8s are not bad. Obviously, they're really good lenses, but they're a little bit long in the tooth. I would like to see a sequel to those lenses come up. Smaller 1.8s. Maybe that could be the move. It could be the second version of those lenses in a smaller compact system, lineup.
That's a
I would
no,
like to
it's a
see it too.
that's a nice idea. F2s that might help them make them smaller. And it's
Yeah.
interesting. It's really interesting you should say that, because I am testing a new lens that's not yet released. It's not a Nikon lens, so everyone relax. But it's from another manufacturer. I'm using it right now, and it
Mhm.
is an f2 lens. It's compact. It's on my
Mm.
ZF, and it's exactly what you've just said,
Ooh.
coming from a third party. You know, coming,
Oh,
yeah.
nice.
So a small f2 compact prime,
Well,
pretty
I'll tell you
compact.
what, that bouquet on you right now looks absolutely beautiful. That
It
fall
looks
off. So
creamy, doesn't it,
it
baby?
is
Oh,
very
that's what I
creamy. Oh,
like.
yes. Okay, so that's interesting. And it's autofocus too, right?
Yes, it is full autofocus, full AF, and the
Wow.
whole thing. So this is kind of what I'm
Wow.
saying. There's a lot of lenses. There's so, like, I am getting an email probably every second or third day.
Mm.
Matt, can you check out this lens for us? You know, they're just coming at a cracking rate, and almost all of them are amazing.
Mm.
There's one range that I got recently that wasn't, but everything else. So 95% are all good quality lenses.
Nice.
Another thing I want to talk about was firmware. Now, above and beyond every other company, as we roll towards the end of the Nikon part of this video, firmware seems to be something that once XPEED 7 arrived, and it's clear to me that XPEED 5, XPEED 6, they were in the old paradigm of cameras, DSLRs. We don't do much upgrading. They come out, they're perfect, we're done.
Yeah.
XPEED 7, they clearly they were sitting around having some coffee or some beers or whatever, and went, you know what? This thing's not a camera. It's going to be this hybrid multi-platform awesome epic thing that we can manipulate and massage and do whatever we want with. And you know
Mhm.
what we're going to do? We're going to roll out firmware updates, and we're going to keep this thing epic years beyond its release. And we've obviously seen that for the Z9. So
Mm.
what are we speculating might happen with firmware? XPEED 7 firmware mostly, because you know, if I was Nikon, I'd have my eye on the future at this point in time.
Mm. Okay, I got some ideas here.
Yeah, lay them on us, baby. Do it.
I think they're going to unlock 30 frames per second raw.
Oh, hello.
I think they're going to unlock it. I think I think they already can do it in the system. It just makes sense. If you can do 20, you can do 30. I think it's already there. I think they're going to unlock it. That's one of
Wow,
my guesses.
that's a big call. I love it.
I think can we get open? No, I don't know. Think we can get open gate. I'm not too sure if we can. I
Well,
mean, you
there's
know,
a rumor. There
yeah.
were rumors at the end of last year talking
Mhm.
about open gate and
Mhm.
talking about higher frame rates.
Okay.
So maybe.
Could be. I would see the Z8 getting the capture, the capture feature that's in the Z9. I think
Yep.
that's coming. I think
Yep.
that just makes sense.
The
I would,
pre-capture.
yeah,
Pre-capture.
pre-capture, yeah.
Yep.
I would love to see. I'm waiting for a camera company to do this. Allow us to do portrait mode. I mean, you can do open gate, or you can call it open gate, whatever it is, but shoot portrait mode for vertical videos without having to
Yep.
turn the camera.
Yep.
Just give us
Yeah,
that crop.
yeah,
That's
that's
nice.
something that just has to happen from my
Y-
perspective. It's just that's what's going on in the world. That's what people
mm,
want, and
Yeah,
I totally agree.
I
So
would love to see that.
I
Yeah.
suppose my perspective is that we've seen such a strong run of Z9 firmware updates.
Mm,
Clearly, some of that is just continuing to innovate with the first of the X-Speed 7 cameras.
yeah.
Will we see quite as, will we get up to firmware 4 or 5 on a Z8 or a ZF? Maybe not because they came to the party later. But
Mm,
I do think if Nikon come up with new things they want to do, like the piracy protection stuff,
mm,
then I do think they will add it in, and any other ideas that they come up with, and I do think going back to our conversation around mobile phones and what's going to be able to happen to keep up with mobile phones. There's so much that we
mm.
can do with connectivity and all that sort of stuff. So
True.
I still think things are going to come. I still think things are going to come for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, well
I agree.
that's Nikon. Now let's have a look if there's a couple of questions. Jeffrey Gibbs asks, "Do you think there is a market for a digital Nikonos full frame underwater camera?" Oh, I almost bought that camera back in the 90s.
Yeah,
I would love to see it. I
yeah.
suppose it's a niche camera, and it's just a matter of how many units do you need to sell to make it viable. I think so. Why not?
But you know what? It's interesting. Speaking of underwater, I was just talking to a friend of mine who went, and one of the issues with the Z system, the Z8 or Z9 for that matter, is I think it's white balance or something like that. When you're below 50 meters, it has a problem with it. It can't white balance or auto white balance. So you have to constantly have to manually change it. And so there's been talks about it in the underwater community that, they were looking for, if Nikon's going to fix this or whatever it is. And I did ask Nikon this question, and they said that they don't know of anything right now. Obviously, they haven't talked to the HQ, but that's quite a niche market. But if they do make an underwater camera, because it is a big market for some people out there who use the Nikon cameras for years on the underwater world. So if they do create, let's say, that specific camera, that would be very interesting. It would be a niche camera, wouldn't sell for everybody, but it definitely would. And if they could fix those auto white balance issues underwater, that would solve some problems, especially for video. Now that people are shooting more video underwater, so that's something that was brought up a few times by some of the community out there. So it could be interesting.
Yeah, it'd be cool. I mean, obviously, less sunlight would, as you get deeper, it changes things. So that all makes sense. Carl is asking, what about firmware updates for our Z8s? Yeah, well, look, as Bobby just said, there are things in a Z9 that are not in a Z8.
Mm,
I think there'll be continued advancements, and I mean, wasn't there also a bird? There was bird detect was
mm,
updated
yeah,
in the Z9. I'm very confident that that's the sort of thing that Z8 owners, there'd be a lot of Z8 owners who are birders. So
yeah,
that bird specific mode, absolutely. So, I'm pretty sure we're only at version 1 of the Z8 firmware, or one, I think there was a minor update of 1.01 or something. So,
mm,
yes, I am confident that there will be more for the Z8. Who
yeah.
knows exactly what'll be in it? And I've talked about in previous videos the idea, are they going to keep parity? Are they going to try and keep parity between the Z8
Mm,
and the Z9? And I
right.
vacillate on that one
Mm.
between how do you differentiate the Z9? Maybe you do want to differentiate the Z9, but people would love the Z8 to keep up with the Z9. So I
I
think
think
that
I think you're right on that. I mean, I think that the parity, well, the difference is obviously you have the inbuilt vertical grip, which has better battery life. That's number one. Better heat dissipation for video. So that's definitely pros to the Z9 over the Z8 already. I would hopefully that they would continue to have them almost parallel on firmware. Obviously, the Z9 will probably have, would get it first, and then the Z8 afterwards. You know what I mean? But I think the difference is right there. It's like now using both of the cameras, I'm like, yeah, I'll use the Z9 for this, and this, but I'll use the Z8 for this and this because of size and compactness. Versus, but if I need, longer battery life and I'm going to be shooting outdoors and I don't want to worry about overheating, Z9 all the way. You know, not even thinking about it.
absolutely. So I mean, I'm one of those people that have the Z9 and the Z8 and do kind of pick and choose based on actually what I'm going to do. So
Yeah.
it'd be cool. Now
Yeah.
Bubba has kind of asked, one question I have never seen is just how much memory is there to work with. I presume he's talking about the Z9 and the Z8 and how ultimately how many kind of applications can be loaded into a
Yeah.
camera and run. Look, it's an interesting question. I don't know. I'll tell you something interesting I observed. I recently did a video with my Sony A7 III,
Hmm.
and I was just with a Sony lens, a Tamron Sony lens,
Hmm.
and I just wanted to check I had the latest firmware, and like it was the latest one was from 2019 or
Hmm.
2021 or whatever.
Right.
The firmware for that camera was 250 megabytes or something.
Mm.
The firmware for a Z8 and a Z9 is something like 110,
Mm.
120 megabytes. There's no question in my mind a Z8 and a Z9 has far more going on. It has far more features and complexity than
Mm.
an A7 III. So there's a couple of things going on there. Either the Sony is much more complicated to program for, or however they're doing it is more complicated,
Mhm.
and or the Nikon code is far more optimized. And they might even be writing in different languages. Like we don't even know what's under the bonnet.
Right.
I suppose all that says to me is we don't even know whether the Z8 and the Z9 are fully optimized and how much more they can squeeze in. And another thing I just thought about when I was reading that question is they could actually unload and offload. Like when you go into auto capture, that feels like its own little app. Basically,
Mm.
it's got its own interface. It's got something we've never seen before.
Mm.
You could kind of just load that on the fly, and then when you jump out, you could offload it, um, from your working memory to your
Mm.
storage memory. So there's all sorts of tricky things I think that can happen, Bubba, to continue to expand what they might be able to achieve. But I don't know the actual answer to that question. I mean,
Yeah, they never made it public how much memory they have in these cameras, do
I,
they? They never
I don't
say.
think so. No,
No, they
I
don't.
mean they don't make public anything much.
That's true. That's true.
Like how many, for example, how many cores? I'm sure that cameras today are multi-core. Um, we don't know how many cores,
You know,
but
it's interesting. It's interesting you say that because you got these like all these other tech channels that will break things down, smartphones, laptops, and they'll really just tear them down. But no one really does that with cameras. They don't
it's
really
weird,
like
isn't it?
say,
It's
yeah,
weird.
like they take apart like a Z9 and say, okay, let's look at the processor, let's look at the inside of it, let's see all the specs. I mean, we never hear this on any camera system for that matter. So it's very fascinating, actually.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I don't know. I think I feel like when I first used the Z9, it was like, oh my God, it's so fast and it's so free and it's just everything
Yeah,
seemed like there was plenty of overhead. It was like you're kind of sitting on the freeway at 60 miles per hour and you're
yeah,
in third or fourth gear and you still can go up to sixth, you can still got a long way to go.
yeah.
Um, for those who drive stick, as they say in the USA, as here we just say drive manual. That's
Mm.
what we say. We don't say stick, we say manual versus automatic. My kids asked me about gears in the car the other day, and because all cars are automatic pretty much these days, and
Yeah.
they couldn't wrap their head around the fact that my daughter said, "Why is there only two pedals?" And I was like, "There used to be three. One was a clutch." Anyway, that's off topic, but it's interesting how the world changes.
Indeed.
Let's move. Let's move on from Nikon to Sony. Thoughts on
Ooh.
Sony? We did touch on. Well, we've kind of touched on it. A12, A93 is a given.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a lot for us to learn about ultimately what a global sensor is going to mean. We've
Mm.
got the latest information from DP Review. That's really interesting. It sort of basically matches what we were talking about a month ago when it first came
Mm.
out about dynamic range and ISO.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on Sony? What else might they do to inspire or excite us in the hybrid mirrorless space? I mean, I know they'll always punch out video cameras probably.
Yeah, they will. I think we'll see an update to the FX3, an FX3 2 or FX4. I think and that'll coincide with the A7S3. I think we'll see an update to those cameras. Because the A7S3 now is feeling a little bit long in the tooth. It's a 12 megapixel, 4K sensor.
Yeah.
Same with the FX3, which is a very, very good sensor, by the way, dual gain ISO, all that stuff. But I think we're going to see it even improve, probably 24 megapixels, if I'm not mistaken, probably go up to 6K. I don't think we'll see 8K. I mean, you could see 8K. I wouldn't put it past Sony, but I think we'll at least see 6K open gate. You know what I mean? And it'll be a little bit more of a hybrid than the A7S3 was, because at 12 megapixels for a still, which is fine. I mean, obviously people, you know, they made a living off even far less megapixels, but and did it very, very well. So it's not to say that 12 megapixels isn't enough. It is, but if you want to sort of entice people to, buy another camera, you gotta throw some candy out there in the mix. And I think a 24 megapixel would make sense to them, or maybe something even higher. Who knows? But I would say definitely we'll see the AI chip for autofocusing. That makes more sense because we're seeing that already kind of filter from the A7R5. We're seeing it to the ZVE1 or sorry, EV. I don't know. There's so many names of these cameras.
I think I got to jump in
yeah.
there and say I think that's brilliant Sony marketing when they go, oh, we've got a separate AI chip. I actually just think,
Mm,
just like in your iPhone where there's 42 cores,
mm,
right, on one chip,
yeah.
it's not a chip, it's a core. That's
Yeah.
all. And they just say it's a chip because it's
Mm,
cool.
yeah.
But
It
it's
does
way
sound
more
very cool.
expensive to produce a separate chip that's just doing that.
Yeah.
Uh, when they can just program the cores to do it. But you got to love them. You got to love them for their marketing.
Yeah,
Um,
indeed, indeed. But yeah, I think the video lineup will improve. But I also think one of the biggest complaints that people are having against Sony, and rightfully so, is if you spend here in Singapore, $9,000 for a Alpha One, and you don't get any firmware updates that match to cameras that are a third of the cost, you're a little bit upset. And so I
well,
think that they're gonna have to do is go back. I mean, they are coming with a firmware update, of course, to address some things, but they need to fix that. You know,
it's really
that's
funny you should say that because John Ishii's just brought up the fact that Sony want to charge dollars for a firmware update. Are you across that? So somewhere I read that they want to
yeah.
charge $150 for grid lines. Hello, knock knock, knock knock.
Yeah, that is a weird. I was like, what are they doing? That is the weirdest thing. And again, the problem I see is I don't think, and this is for the A7 IV, if I'm not mistaken. Um,
Yes.
I don't think the A7 IV was as big of a hit as I think they were hoping it was going to be. And I think a lot of that's due to them releasing every other camera every other month, coming with a new camera every other month that's bettering the camera that just came out before that. And everybody's like, well, why would I buy an A7 IV then? I can buy a ZVE1 that's going to take me better video if I want video, and then I'm going to get that core or chip from the A7R5 coming into it, the new algorithm, all that stuff. And why would I buy the A7 IV? And then now the A7R5 is such a fantastic price secondhand now. It's mind blowing how good that price is. It is very close to a ZF
Wow.
secondhand for an A7R5 mint versus a new ZF. It's
Two
very
grand.
close.
2 grand?
Yeah, it's a few grand.
Two
Here in
grand.
Singapore, a secondhand A7R5 is 3,600 Singapore dollars, which is around 3,002 USD, maybe, or 328 USD. I don't know what the currency conversion is, but still, for a camera, that is, you know what I mean? That's a lot.
It is a
Big
lot.
savings.
Ray's
Yeah.
just made a great joke. Before paying for the update, it's gridlock.
Yeah.
Nice one, Ray. Um, so Sony lenses, have we heard any noise about Sony lenses or anything that's going on for there? And Willie Mays has just asked a question. Do you guys would love to see A7C equivalent rangefinder like and some sort of hot shoe EVF like the GFX? Sorry.
uh,
Sorry, would we like to see an
yeah.
A7C equivalent rangefinder
Mhm.
like a GFX? Oh, I see what you're saying. In the Nikon range? Well, we talked about rangefinder before, and yes, I'd love
Yeah.
to see a rangefinder. I think the Nikon rangefinders are absolutely beautiful artifacts, beautiful pieces of hardware.
Yeah.
I don't really mind what you stick in it. It can be 12 megapixels, just nighttime monochrome, don't mind, or it can be 61 megapixels. I don't mind. Yeah, and imagine if it's a size where it can kind of, because it's a rangefinder, it doesn't have the hump of the prism on the top. No prism anymore, but we still have these humps. You can just kind of slide it into your pocket. That'd be super duper cool.
That's where they need
Um,
the smaller lenses to come into play. Once
there
those
you
smaller
go.
lenses come up, then the rangefinder will definitely make a lot more sense.
Well, I had a
Yeah.
conversation with someone somewhere where the rangefinder is like, do we want a fixed rangefinder or an
Oh,
interchangeable? But I do both. That's my
yeah.
answer. Do
Yeah.
both. Do both. Anyway, sorry, what were you going to say?
No, I think what you're saying in terms of Sony, I mean, the firmware updates, yeah, that paying for that one is very odd. But I think the A7 IV just didn't really hit with it. I don't know. I really think that maybe Sony will. I mean, I don't want to say they're not going to be aggressive this year. They always are, but they've really updated so many cameras in 2023. I think there's only a few to really update now. I don't even think they're going to come out with anything new. I think the FX6 probably will get updated. I think that's is due for an update. So in terms of the cinema line, you'll probably see a sequel to that camera. You'll see a new FX3 and an A7S3 respectively. Those are some of the big announcements that I feel that are coming. Alpha 1, 2 towards the end of the year, I think probably would come. But outside of that, I think lenses wise, they've come out with a lot of their GM2s already, which have already sort of fixed the issues that they had with the 2470, the 1635. The 85 1.4, it does need an update. So that one probably will see an 85 from them. Probably very small, compact. I think that would come this year. What else? 135 is still a really good lens, man. It's still a really good lens. I mean, they could come up with a newer one, maybe smaller, but I don't know. The 135 is already really, really good.
Maybe an 85 1.2.
Yeah, maybe 85 1.2. I think that's probably what they'll come out with. And it'll be compact. So I would say it'd probably be a little bit larger than the 50 1.2, which is very compact for a 50 1.2.
Yep.
Comparing to the Z version of that.
Yep.
But yeah, I think that would be the most likely thing we'll see this year.
And I'm so sorry, but we jumped Panasonic, which is going to be our last speculation for today's video. So throw any questions in as we start to wrap this up. And unbelievably, I'm not sure how this happened, but we are nearing the 2-hour mark.
Are we really?
Yeah, 1:45, Bobby. How did that happen?
Wow.
This is just you and me hanging out. Singapore, Melbourne, boom. It just happens. And thank you, everybody, for being here. And we're loving your questions. We're not wrapping things up yet. We're going to talk about Panasonic, and we're going to finish with what are your hopes and dreams for 2024. We're going to do that as well.
Yeah, sounds good.
So Panasonic, I know almost nothing about Panasonic. I'm hoping you know a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite familiar with the lineup of cameras. I've used the S1R, the Lumix S1R, the S1H quite extensively when they first came out, and a little bit of the S5 II, S5 IIX. Panasonic is interesting. In certain markets, it doesn't do well. Here in Singapore, it just doesn't do well at all here, right? I mean, you can barely see a camera on the shelf. It's not that they're sold out. It's just they don't sell. So in certain markets like Malaysia, and we're talking about Southeast Asia, right? Malaysia, I think, does well, relatively well. Japan, I think it does well. Other markets, I'm not sure how it is in Australia. Because I think there is a much more of an intertwined relationship between Panasonic and Leica now than before. They call it the L2 partnership. I think what's going to happen is we are going to see a sequel to the S1R. Could be an S2R, S1R2, but I think that will come out after the SL3, because previously it was the S1R that came out. Then 6-7 months later, the SL2 came out, which was respectively, they're very similar cameras in terms of tech. But I think what happened is the S1R took a lot of the steam out of the SL2 in terms of the price range, because you've got one that's priced here and one that's priced here, and they're about almost the same in terms of specs. Obviously, Leica's Leica, different build quality, slightly different color science, but in terms of the hardware, they do share a lot of the technology. So I think we're going to see that reverse, where the Leica will be first coming out of the gate, and then after that will be Panasonic with their higher resolution, probably 60 megapixel camera. S1, that one was recently announced to be discontinued, so they'll probably come out with a sequel to that, or just go to an S1H to better video, more hybrid. They use the phase detect autofocus technology that's in the S5 IIX. Will go into all their cameras, which is actually really good. I'll tell you, that is a very good camera. It's small, it's compact. Build quality feels a little bit more on the inexpensive side of things, but the autofocusing is a huge difference from the S1R and even the SL2 and SL2S respectively from Leica. So if they improve on that autofocus now and give us better video features like they've been doing, I think it's gonna be a very interesting year for Panasonic. It's just that Panasonic had a big issue when they first launched. They came out of the gate with the S1R, the S1, priced at a premium. They had 3 lenses at launch, and they were very expensive. And it was at a point like, do I want to switch an entirely new system for 3 lenses and a camera system that is very priced at a premium? Or do I just stick with my Sonys, my Canons, and my Nikons? And the market sort of said, we're going to stick to what we're going to be doing now. And then Panasonic had to come out with less expensive cameras like the S5 to sort of, and then discounts from B&H and everything else to just start moving products. But I think they found their niche now. I think they understand where their strengths are. Lower megapixel, better video, much more of a hybrid camera really good, better autofocusing performance, really good bang for your buck when you consider the features they have in their camera system, and small 1.8 lenses that are all relatively the same size. Very good for video and very good for photography. So I think we'll see sort of the sequel of those other cameras, those full frame cameras, but after Leica does theirs.
Amazing. That is a very comprehensive roundup, Bobby. Thank you so much.
No worries.
I love that. That's absolutely fantastic. Now, Chuck has asked, how many cameras do we think Nikon will put out this year? No idea. Last year was ZF and Z8, so two. The year before was, I think, Z30, but I think that was post the Z9. They just had a
Yeah.
lot. They had a lot to deal with getting, I think the Z9 was a massive birthing process. And so they were building up a head of steam. So look, my guess would be to be minimum of two. That's my guess. And beyond that, who knows? Like, who
I
knows?
mean, I think they got to come out with a high resolution ZF. I think they're going to. I think it's going to come. I think the
Don't you
iron
think
is
it's too
hot
soon though,
strike.
Bobby? Don't you think it's just a bit too soon? Like it's only been a year. Like the ZF. When did the ZF come out? It came out in like September or something, didn't it? I
It did, it did, but if they come out with a different, not the same body design, a different body design, like
Sure.
ZF3, for example, and they go higher resolution, I think, and they come out with a series of lenses, I think it just rides the wave. Now, again, you might be right. It may be too soon. Maybe that would be 2025. But I would say, while the iron's hot, you're getting a lot of new people into the company now that have not that weren't looking at Nikon for the number of years. Even younger audiences.
Bobby, I'm just going to let you talk for a second. I'll be back in a tick.
Sure. Even younger audiences that I think that were, moved to Sony, moved to Canon respectively, or Fujifilm, now are looking at Nikon and going, hey, wait a second here. This is something really interesting. So I do think we're going to see a high resolution ZF. So it could be I hope it's a ZF3, red stripe, make it like the F3, which everybody's trying to emulate the ZF to be like, and let it rock. I would just ride this wave and really come out with a series of lenses and just knock it out of the park. Take a look at some of the comments here. Monochrome would be a different market and high res would be a different market, but need to wait for high res, in my opinion. There's a lot of talk on monochrome, and I love monochrome cameras. Obviously, I tried the Leica series of monochrome cameras from the Q to the M, and I think they're fantastic. Dynamic range, image quality, they are second to none. They're arguably my favorite Leica M cameras, digital M cameras. But I think it fits Leica because they're so niche, but I don't know if it makes sense for Nikon right now. I think Nikon, they've really found their stride. And I think to make a monochrome camera, would people buy it, or would they just say, look, I can change it in Adobe Lightroom or Capture One and I'll be good enough for it? So I don't know. I don't know if there's a market for that necessarily, but high resolution for sure.
I think if you think about the ZF and its price point, and let's say you bring out a monochrome at a similar sort of price point, similar to the ZF, I think some people would own both. Now, Bobby, you're being asked when are you coming to Melbourne so we can do this in person.
That would be great, right? That'd be
Yeah,
fantastic.
maybe that should be a 2024 goal.
Speaking of which, that's a good goal. That's a good goal. I might be going with my partner. I get to see when she's going to Melbourne again, because she goes once a year. Because she, as I mentioned, she has the KX Pilates franchise that she runs in Indonesia. So she goes to Melbourne for the annual meetup. So never know, maybe this year. But I'd love to come down. We've got to do this in person. That'd be fun.
We should. Now, all right. So let's wrap up the nerdy gear talk as much as we love it. And I want to say a massive thank you to the community that's out there and so many people that have been with us for 2 hours. You guys rock. You're amazing. Chuck, you're a legend. Thank you for being there. What we're going to do now is share our dreams for 2024. What are our goals, our dreams, our stretch goals? What do you want to do? Are there any mountains you're climbing? And please, everyone in the comments, if there's if there's a dream that you have that you're hoping to get to, and it might be that you're going on safari in Kenya. It might be you're finally getting to New York. It might be you want to go to Singapore. And what fruit was it that
Durian.
Might be that you want to have one of those fruits with Bobby in Singapore. What are your goals for 2024? And then we're out of here, baby. All right. Talk to me. You go first, Bobby. What do you got? Are you doing Everest this year?
No, I'm not doing Everest this year. I might climb a hill somewhere, but not Everest.
Yep.
Um, for me this year, obviously, just really continue with the work that I've been doing and really try to go more regional with my work. I mean, not talking YouTube, just talking my personal work in terms of hosting and acting, things like that. I would love to go more regional. I think COVID for the past number of years has sort of handicapped my type of work considerably, and hopefully that can change this year going forward. So that's one thing I would love to do in terms of this channel that I'm doing YouTube wise. I'm going to be really aggressive with it. I mean, I've got a big number in the back of my head for the end of 2024, and I'm just going to put all my effort into it and just say, make this happen. So I'm going to go with a big number of 100K by the end of 2024. That's
Holy what?
yeah,
All
that's
right.
my. I don't know if I'll hit it, but that's in my mind. I'm gonna go for that, and I'm just gonna just keep creating content, find the right team of people to work with. I've found some really great people already, but continue with that and just push ahead and see where it goes. You know what I mean? I might end up with 50. I might end up with 45. I don't know, but I'm just gonna. That's the number in my head, and that's where I'm gonna aim for because I think the community. I think there have been I've seen some transitions in the photography communities. I mean, obviously, over a period of time, people get burnt out, people get tired. It's a lot of work. This is not an easy job. It's not just turning on the camera and just talking. It's a lot of testing and taking photos and finding inspiration and really doing this day in and day out. It takes a lot of work, but I think that there is going to be a new resurgence of creators out there like yourself and myself and others out there that are kind of what I mean, we're up and coming and growing, and I would love to, yeah, be part of that. So that's kind of
Amazing,
what
Bobby.
my thoughts
Well,
are.
I hope that in your wake, I can also get to 100,000. That's astonishing. I mean,
For sure.
we could do it together.
We can do it together, my friend. Yes, indeed. Yes,
And
indeed.
in light of that very statement, go subscribe to Bobby. Give him some love. Let's get him another 100 or 200 just today.
Love to,
And
love to.
if
Thank you.
what's 200 times 365? I think that's 60,000. So you'd be getting close because you're at 25,000 now.
Yeah.
We've got
Yeah.
some lovely, beautiful comments here. All sorts of people. Randall wants to go to Australia and New Zealand. Um, Felipe says Nikon needs a cine line. Well, there you go. Dave, I want to go on a walk through the laneways with Matt. Dave, we will do it.
Mm.
I'm going to get stuff happening. John Ishii, go for it, Bobby. You can get there. And well, you can. You've grown massively just in like 1 year, which is quite unbelievable. So it's
Thanks.
very good work. Very impressed. Yeah, Bubba, we will do the walk around station. Oh, there's Stu Blue. Oh my God, what is he saying there? I've been seeing a lot of new Nikon channels on you. Have you? That's interesting. I don't see them being surfaced, but yeah, look, it's an interesting thing. There are
Mm.
there are a lot of channels, and
Yeah.
it's all. I suppose we're all doing our own thing to differentiate ourselves and be original, but at the same time, community
Yeah.
is so important, and
Agreed.
I'm really pleased, Bobby, that on my way home from Japan, I was able to drop into Singapore and spend time with you. And now
Likewise.
we've got this great friendship and connection. And, I've got some ideas. I've got some
Yeah.
ideas about what we need to be doing. And
Okay.
yeah, we'll talk about it and we'll present it all to you in good time. If Bobby says yes, you never know.
Indeed. How about you? What are your dreams, though? What are your dreams for
Oh yeah,
2024?
me. Well, so for the first time in 20 years, I didn't put out a calendar, which was a real big personal thing for me, not to do that. And
Okay.
the world keeps changing, and COVID shut down a lot of the retailers that I sell to,
Mm.
and it's just like it's a lot of work. And of course, a calendar has this very small window of opportunity to sell it. And this is like I've been producing proper calendars. You put them on your wall, and all that sort of thing. Some of the
Mm.
viewers will know about the calendar. And it's like, but I also make books. And so
Mm.
my goal for this year, one of the big goals is to get another book out. It's been a couple of
Nice.
years since I did my last book. I love books. I love even my own books. I will sit on the couch with a cup of tea and I will spend an hour just looking at my own book. And there's nothing better than looking at still images and just taking the time, because we live in the Instagram world where if we spend 1 second with an image, we're lucky. And there's
Mm.
something about a book. There's something about that artifact and that printed thing that really really makes a difference to the image, and I can't stress that enough. So there's that. Of course, like you, Bobby, I want to keep growing what I'm doing here. I love this space.
Mhm.
I love the
Yeah.
community. And as I
Yeah.
said in a recent video, I'm a massive nerd. So talking about gear, thinking about gear, enjoying gear has been something I've been doing since I was like 10 years old. So there's nothing new in all of that. But I also love creating, going out into the streets and turning what might be the dullest laneway or the dullest something into a kind of a sort of an abstract piece of art or whatever it is I end up doing, along
Yeah.
with what I do for my clients, which so much of the time I can't share here because it's either not out for 3 months or, I often sell the copyright. So I don't own it anymore
Okay.
with my work. So YouTube, absolutely big push. And the biggest thing, which I was going to talk about at the start, is
Mm.
I'm hoping to do a little bit of a YouTube Madewan tour of the Northern Hemisphere, which you happen to be in the Northern Hemisphere by 70 kilometers, by the way. This man lives on the equator. It's just hot there all the time. It's crazy. Um, and so, yeah, I don't know whether I'm going to do a GoFundMe or I need to have a coffee fund, which is actually travel the world and meet all of these beautiful people that are in the comments and just get out there and create and share the love, bring the love. I don't know. I've got a feeling and I want to try and turn it into something. So we'll see what happens. So that's three. The fourth one is in my warehouse. My goal is to get that running properly again and get my, whoa, where's he gone?
Did I leave?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Where did you
Hold on
go,
a second.
Bobby?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, man, you're still here.
Let
We
me check
just
my camera. The camera could have gone. Let me see something here a second.
It's all good, buddy. And so the fourth one is to get my photo studio going again so I can do portraiture and so on. So there you go. They are my goals and my stretch goals for 2024. Bobby's back, which is amazing. We love
Yeah.
Bobby's work. Everybody, thank you for sharing your stuff. Great to see Chris here, Chris Stew Blue. Chuck, you're amazing. Keep up the amazing work. Bubba and everyone else, Luke, Wayne, Brandel. You've all been amazing. Thanks for hanging in with us now I can't quite see. I've got a window on a window here. Have we hit the, oh, Bobby,
Yeah.
your
Yeah,
camera's
I
had
think the
enough.
camera. I think it's conking out on me after two
Man,
hours.
we can't see you. Anyway, let's say goodbye then because your camera's hit its 2 hour limit.
Here we go.
Oh, he's back. All right. All
Coming
right.
back. Here we go. Here we
So
go.
everybody, thank you so much for being with us. It's amazing to have you all here. We will see you again soon. It's been a great live stream and it's been just great to spend time. Bobby's camera's gone off again.
I'm here.
Bobby,
Yep,
thank
I'm
you.
here. Thanks, Matt. Thank you so much.
Been amazing to have you here and we will say goodbye from here, everybody. Thank you so much again. Bye for
Bye-bye.
now.
Bye. Hey, Matt. Hold on a second.